call to order the meeting of the Privileges and Elections Committee. Clerk, will you please open the roll?
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, before we start, we have just a couple administrative things we need to take care of. The first one is Senator Barker's Senate Bill 1296, which is the Potomac River Bridge Towing Compact. That ended up in P&E. And while I love that we have such a big docket, I love even more when we can send something to somebody else where it properly belongs. And in this case, we need to re-refer that to transportation. Motion's been made and seconded to re-refer Senate Bill 1296 to transportation. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. And then the second bill is Senate Bill 1330, which is Senator Stanley's School Modernization Commission. The Finance Committee has asked for that, and if I'm not mistaken, Meg, we don't vote on that. We just re-refer it directly to them. Right, okay. So the motion's been made, properly seconded, to re-refer Senate Bill 1330 to Finance. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay. And with that, I'm going to move into the regular calendar for the P&E Committee. And the first thing I'm going to do, because the majority of the people who are here, I feel confident, are here for the redistricting bills. So rather than follow a sign-up sheet, we're going to take those bills first. And if you want to stay for the rest of the committee, you're welcome to, but then you don't have to be here all day. So the first, we have two categories of redistricting bills. We have criteria and we have the constitutional amendment. And I'll just say for members of the audience and for this committee, I cannot recall a time when there has been more effort spent just by the members of this committee working through these bills, trying to do this side by side, and one, have everybody understand them, and two, work hard to get to a place where we can report out at least one criteria vehicle, one constitutional amendment, and then working through all the other bills. So what we're going to do first is take up the, somebody's chirping, take up the constitutional amendments first. Actually, since you want to take up criteria first, since you're sitting there, you stand up first. Okay, so why don't we dispose of criteria first? That might be less complicated than the constitutional amendments. Let's do that. So I'm going to ask Senator Suderline, do you want to go first on your criteria bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill that I've got for you today is Senate Bill 1579. And first, I'd like to tell you why I'm carrying the bill before you, and then a little bit about what my bill does. So I live in Cave Spring in Roanoke County. The real estate office where I work is a mile from my house. It's not in the same district that I represent, but the line's got to be drawn somewhere, and it just happens to be drawn in the middle of Cave Spring district. But up the road in Windsor Hills District, it's drawn in the middle of that, and it's also drawn in the middle of Catawba. I actually sold a house to someone on a road out in Catawba, and after they closed, they said, "So we're your constituent now?" I said, "No, you live on the north side of the road, and I represent the south side. Senator Edwards is your senator." And they said, "Oh, that's interesting that way, but maybe it's just Roanoke County. We're a big county relative to others in our part of the state, so maybe we just have to have all our magisterial districts cut up." But then Bedford County, I represent 3 precincts there, and they're not. Bedford County is adjacent to Roanoke County on the map, so you might think I represent the 3 most western that are adjacent to Roanoke County. No, I represent 3 precincts in the southeast corner of Bedford, far from Roanoke County. Then Franklin County, I have basically, if it were a clock, I'd have from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I'm missing the southeast quadrant of that county. Montgomery County is divided there between Senator Edwards' district and my district, and Carroll County is divided. But it's not just my counties that are divided. I represent half of Hillsville, which isn't a very big town, half of Withville. It's basically east of 4th Street. There's nothing really different between east and west of 4th Street, except Senator Carrico represents the western half. I represent the eastern half. I represent parts of Rocky Mount that it's hard to describe what parts of Rocky Mount I have because it's cut up. There's no clear-cut way there. And in Christiansburg, I represent East Christiansburg and West Christiansburg, but the vast majority of people in Christiansburg don't live in my district. So that's why I feel very strongly about compactness. It's very hard to represent a district in you want to go to all the barbecues, you want to go to all the meetings in your district, but every farm bureau in my district has their own event. Every bar association has their own event. Every chamber of commerce, every NAACP, every different group has their own events. And I try to go to as many as I can, but we're part-time legislature, and oftentimes if I go to a Bedford event, maybe 10% of the people live in my district there. Then I go to Carroll, half of the people live in my district. And I won't go through every jurisdiction, but that's the way it is in my district. My district was challenged on compactness grounds in state court. We've got a state constitutional amendment, or provision rather, in our state constitution that says we're going to have compactness. My district was upheld, which I would say means we don't have a compactness requirement at all. If a district like mine passes the state constitution, we don't have a real compactness requirement. And so with that, I've set about trying to find a way to make it so that we wouldn't have districts that are completely needlessly divide localities like the several that I represent, which are great places, but they shouldn't be divided up like this. And so the bill before you, what it seeks to do is make it so that congressional and legislative districts, they've got to be followed by population. That's something that we've had before, but that we're going to try to not divide up the localities needlessly. And if you have to divide a locality, at least follow the magisterial district lines. Like I told you in my county in Roanoke, most of the magisterial districts are divided between, there are 5 magisterial districts. I represent all of Vinton District. The other 4 are all divided. They all each have 2 senators. And so, at the civic leagues, they say, well, who should we talk to about the issue? I say, well, Senator Edwards or Senator Newman and I will both be interested in it, but the number of divided localities we have, it divides the amount of time you can actually spend advocating for your constituents with those, very localized issues. And it says, and if we can't go with the magisterial districts or city council districts for the cities that have such things, then we ought to go by precincts. And we have had issues where with all the divided precincts, and I didn't go through all the divided precincts I represent as well. With all the divided precincts,
We want you to go through each one.
Well, I know. We found that there were people voting in the wrong district because the precincts, it was nothing that the voter tried to do wrong. It wasn't anything the registrar's office tried to do wrong, but it needlessly complicated, simply where does someone vote by splitting up the precincts like that. And, we sometimes have close elections in Virginia. I mean, I can't remember which room it was in, but, when it ends up being in a bowl and you have to wonder, did everyone vote in the right district? It really makes an impact. So that's what this bill tries to do. And last year when I brought the bill forward, my friend, the senator from Chesapeake, he said, your bill doesn't specifically have protections here on voting rights and the federal law. And I said, well, it's federal law. It's federal court cases. We have to abide by them. Well, it's Senator Spruill. He's a great senator. I voted for multiple bills of his this week. And he said, that's not good enough. And you know what? He was right. And so I got to have the fun of having a bill that got reported out here, and I had amended it on the floor, and I got an hour-long debate about my amendments, and that was great. But one of the good things about that was, and I would just point you to it, it's in Section C. It says clearly here that districts drawn districts shall be drawn in accordance with the requirements of federal and state laws and judicial decisions interpreting such laws to address racial and ethnic fairness, including the equal right or equal protection clause of the Constitution of the United States, that's in the 14th Amendment, and the provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 as amended, which makes, puts the Commonwealth in the code that not only are we abiding by that because the supremacy clause that exists in the U.S. Constitution, but because it's what we believe in. And so that's why the bill is the way it is, and I've got to discuss this issue more than I ever thought I would.
Okay. Is there anybody well, first let me ask, are there any committee members who have a question of the patron? Okay, Senator Redmond.
In the weeds maybe, but it's important. On section E on line 43 to 47, where it talks about that it's contiguous if a bridge or ferry runs across a part of water, but then it says connections by water running downstream or upriver are not permissible. What's that actually mean?
What it means is, so in my district, how you get to the Bedford part is not connected by land to any other part of my district. There's a Great Lake, Smith Mountain Lake, 500 miles of shoreline, great place to visit. But it divides the two parts of my district. But importantly, there's a bridge that connects those communities. And so when I care mostly about it there, but that'd be most important because we have two counties on the eastern shore that would have to have, if you said that water doesn't count as contiguousness, you wouldn't be able to draw a Senate district. But there are ferries and there are bridges, and those connect them to other communities. But so we can't just say, hey, by the way, the Eastern Shore, we're going to pick it up in Fairfax County because, there's waterways in between there. Similarly, in my area where we sometimes have very small creeks, you can't say, we're going to follow this very narrow creek that, only a handful of people live along for, 10 miles, and then when it picks up again, now we're going to make, a district. That's what it says.
Senator Spruill.
I'll support my brother 100%.
Thank you. I don't know what else I could say now.
Yeah, you should quit. Yeah, don't say another word. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1579? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 1579? Come forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Jessica Colleen. I'm Deputy Counsel to Governor Northam. I'm here on behalf of the administration. We oppose this bill. We believe it does not go far enough to address some of the concerns that we believe that should be in criteria for redistricting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Senator Deeds.
Is this the same bill that was vetoed last year?
Yes.
Okay, so
With some additional language, but
Yes.
what's the additional language?
it's.
I believe it's exactly the
Is
same.
it exactly the same? Okay, I thought it had been amended. Okay, I apologize. It's identical.
Don't hold me to, I've written 5 different versions of this bill because I wanted to make sure that I made the corrections that were requested last year, and those were good. But I believe this is the same version as what we finished on last year and was passed.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairman,
Senator Cosgrove.
a question for the administration.
Yes.
The governor says it doesn't go far enough. Has the administration offered amendments to this?
Yes, we have, Madam Chair. We are here supporting Senator McClellan's bill. That will be up later.
Well, Madam Chairman, that doesn't quite answer my question. Did you offer amendments to Senator Suderline's bill?
Oh, yes, I believe we did last year. And I believe they were not accepted by.
Let me try one more time, Madam Chairman. Has the administration offered amendments to this year's bill brought today by the man standing next to you, Senator Suderline?
Madam Chairman, no, we have not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak? Okay.
Second.
Move to report. The motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1579. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Okay, this one reports.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.
Senator McClellan, you want to go?
So Senate Bill 1327 is also a criteria bill that I believe goes farther than Senator Sutherland's bill. The main differences between the two is that Senate Bill 1327 would also prohibit the use of political data, so that the main criteria used for our districts would be they comply with federal and state laws dealing with the Voting Rights Act and the Equal Protection Clause and similar issues. They would be compact and contiguous. They would keep communities of interest together, avoid split precincts, to the extent practicable, keep political jurisdictions together. But you would not use the Democratic Performance Index or Republican Performance Index in drawing the districts, and you would not use or give look at the addresses of the incumbents. I think what we have seen oftentimes, and I was on the other side of the Capitol during redistricting, so I didn't pay much attention to what was done over here, but over there definitely were districts that were drawn specifically to put people in the same districts or to make districts more or less Democratic or Republican. At the time, what I noticed was that data was very skewed anyway, because the 2009 election and the 2008 election were, in my opinion, outliers, and yet those outliers were relied more heavily on drawing districts than are we keeping communities of interest together. So a couple of, I represented the 71st House District, which is part of the city of Richmond. When that map was originally introduced, it divided a number of neighborhoods. It had a number of split precincts. For example, in Church Hill, the Church Hill neighborhood was divided directly along Broad Street into two different districts in a way. If you're going to divide Church Hill, there were ways to divide it where you kept communities of interest together, but it was sort of arbitrarily drawn down the middle of Broad Street. Similarly, the Fan was divided 3 different ways in a way that did not keep communities of interest together. The one other thing I would note is we need to decide what's more important, keeping communities of interest together or keeping jurisdictional boundaries together. In our cities where annexation was used, and Richmond, Henrico, and Chesterfield are a good example, if you go to Eastern Richmond, many times you have no idea that you've crossed the line over into Henrico County. As a matter of fact, there are neighborhoods that are split between the city of Richmond and Henrico County. And we need to decide, is it more important that community, that neighborhood be in the same district or split between 2 jurisdictions? So those are some of the issues that this bill tries to address.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the committee that has a question for the patron? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Jessica Colleen, Deputy Counsel to Governor Northam. I stand in support of this bill. We believe that the criteria that is outlined here will help the map drawers draw fair districts, and from those districts, voters will be able to choose their candidates of choice. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you a question. You said that the administration wasn't supportive of something that had less criteria, but assuming that we can get a majority of people to agree on one criteria bill, and while it might have less, it might not have everything. The real question is, could you see the administration being in a position where the perfect can't be the enemy of the good, and the good that gets the majority of people support, which gets reported out as criteria that I think generally everybody who is in favor of reform would support? is it possible that the administration would support something that is less than this specific bill?
I believe that we would take a look at, I know we have been told we would take a look at any bill that would come out of here and look at it holistically. So I can't speak to anything that hasn't been passed yet, but I know that we would look at anything that would come out.
Because that's really the challenge when these bills come before this committee. Ideally, we could be a study group and we could sit down and dissect all of these and work on it together over a period of time. But because we have to make this call in this committee, what the committee has in front of it is the best side-by-side comparison that we can produce. And the idea is to get a consensus and a majority around one. And so that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Madam
In
Chair,
favor
I
of
have
the
a
bill?
question.
First Senator Reeds and then Senator Edwards.
This is a question for Meg. On line, I guess, 31 through 32, it seems like a lot of unnecessary language that's describing the Federal Voting Rights Act. I don't understand why we have that additional language when we could just sincerely just say drawn of any district except as may be necessary to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965.
I can tell you why it's in there.
Okay.
A couple of reasons. First, the Voting Rights Act has to be reauthorized periodically, and I think there is a concern that if Congress either proactively decides not to reauthorize it, or like we saw with the Violence Against Women Act, if the deadline expires and Congress has not acted, we still want to make sure that the protections of the Voting Rights Act are codified in Virginia law. I think there's also some concern if the Supreme Court strikes down portions of the law and then Congress does not act to reauthorize those sections, like what happened with the preclearance provision. The Supreme Court struck down the preclearance provision. Everyone expected Congress to redo it. The Supreme Court gave guidance on how to redo the preclearance provision, and yet it's been several years later and that provision has not been reenacted. And so rather than being at the whim of Congress in an age when Congress is a bit dysfunctional, we would rather put those protections in our state code.
Okay, Senator Edwards, you had a question.
Yes, Senate Bill 1327, yours. Yours says on line 27, existing political boundaries should be considered. Comparing that with pseudolines, Senate Bill 1579 says existing political boundaries shall be respected to the maximum extent possible.
Right.
There's a difference there, is there not?
And you can say that if you want to.
You consider it rather than the maximum extent possible.
Well, I can't speak to what Senator Suderline was trying to get at, but what I was trying to get at with this language is the issue I stated before, that sometimes you have political boundaries that don't reflect the communities of interest due to changes over time or things that happen during
So
annexation.
yours is more flexible.
Gives you
correct?
flexibility, yeah.
All right. Secondly, on the same line, no district shall be drawn for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring any political party, incumbent legislator, or member of Congress, or other individual or entity. There's nothing like that in the previous bill of Senator Suderline's, is there?
That is correct.
Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. That's a significant difference, is there not?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Senator Cosgrove.
there are differences, but I will tell you that there is no compactness requirement in this particular bill. And it only requires that county lines be, quote, considered, which will allow further splitting of localities into many district precincts. It seems to me that the bill we just, voted on was much more clear and open to less, interpretation than this one. So,
Madam Chair, if I may, just briefly.
Yes, go ahead.
If you look at line 17, it says each district shall be composed of continuous and compact territory. So compactness is addressed there.
And Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I
Senator
would say
Deeds.
further, that issue is addressed by the Constitution. And the bill, there's nothing about this bill or the bill that we considered previously that changes the Constitution. Part of the problem, I guess, of dealing with these bills one after another is that there's going to be some inconsistency, and it's really difficult to weed out the inconsistency and try to vote on them one by one.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Senator Edwards
Senator
brought
Reeves.
up about Senator Sutherland's bill, if it had existing political boundaries. On line 28 of Sutherland Bill D says existing political boundaries shall be respected, and it goes on, yada, yada, yada. So it does have it in there. So that's not true that it doesn't have it.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Are there any other questions of the committee?
I move to report.
The motion's been made.
Speaking to the bill, Madam Chair,
Senator Edwards.
it's very significant that Senator McClellan's bill says no district should be drawn for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring any political party, incumbent legislator, et cetera. That's a very significant factor. The U.S. Supreme Court is more or less trying to take up that issue, but it has not yet done so. And this is one of the biggest factors in terms of criteria, and that's why I think this bill is a superior bill.
Okay. So the motion's been made and properly seconded to pass Senate Bill 1327. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 7, no 7.
Okay, bill fails to report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next criteria bill we have is Senate Bill 1003, and that is Senator Chase's bill. And she is not here. Oh, yeah, sorry. You're on the committee. All I have to do is look to my left. Sorry. How could I get that wrong?
The day's long. It's all good.
Okay, and to be clear, you wanted yours also to stand alone, correct?
That is
You did
correct.
not want yours rolled in or heard in conjunction with something else?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I stand with many of you who desire to believe that we need some reform in our redistricting. Our constituents take a look at the maps and they see how they're oddly drawn. They see the politics that's involved in the current lines that are drawn, and they've come to us and they've said, we want to make sure that they pick us and not the other way around. And so, I stand with my constituents back home that have charged me with the task of correcting what I believe is the problems we've had with political gerrymandering. There are a couple things that I want to comment on. There's one decision that we have to make up front, and that is this: do you go with an independent commission, or do you allow the General Assembly, who are elected by the people, to make these types of decisions? And I'd like to address that first. It is a part of the Virginia Constitution as it stands right now for the legislature to draw the lines. And the reason being, in my opinion, is number one, the people drawing the lines are elected by the people in our districts. It's also transparent in that you know the political stripe of every person that's elected by the people that's actually drawing those lines, and they are accountable back to the people back home. While I appreciate the well intentions of this independent commission where we have 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 4 independents, here's my reservation. It's pretty clear if we were to, and my understanding is that they're not elected officials. So these are basically appointed folks, and I call them bureaucrats. I'm sorry, because that's what they are. When you're not elected by the people, you're an appointed bureaucrat. And so I really have to ask the people who are supporting an independent commission, do you want to lose the ability to have accountability on the people who are drawing the lines? And I would say, I don't really think that you do.
I think you want the General Assembly drawing those lines because they represent you. They are accountable to you, the people, and this independent commission is not. They are appointed. And so they will do what they're going to do, and there's no accountability to the people that you elect, the General Assembly, which is why my bill is a criteria bill. I've been watching this for 12 years. I've been a part of the political world for 12 years. I worked for different congressmen. I was involved behind the scenes with redistricting many years ago. And here's what I would tell you. What we don't want is legislators, a select handful of legislators, going behind closed doors, making those decisions and leaving the rest of the legislature to not be included in those decisions. And that's happened on both sides of the aisle. Republicans and Democrats have done that. The Democrats did that in the Senate with the drawing of our lines. Republicans did that in the House and the drawing of the House lines. So we're both at fault, let's be honest. So what I have proposed in this bill is that we continue to allow the General Assembly, because they are accountable to the people, and you know the political stripe, which is transparency. And as you all know, I'm a huge proponent of transparency and co-founded the Transparency Caucus. I feel like this independent commission would be a step backward. I'd also like to say of this independent commission, you have 3 Republicans, 3 independents, and then you have 4 independents. And who is going to pick what an independent is? What is the criteria for an independent? And who's going to make those kind of decisions? Well, I think the independent commission sounds good. When you talk about actually implementing that, I think it becomes a real challenge. What Senate Bill 1003 does, it is very similar to the other 2 bills that you've heard before you today with Senator McClellan, which I did support that bill, and also voted in favor of Senator Suderline and my bill that we advanced last year that passed the House and the Senate. It adds more criteria. It gives the General Assembly more criteria. It includes population. You have to have equal populations. It includes the compactness, meaning condensed district. They can't, as in Senator Suderline's example, where it's spread out. It has to be compact. Contiguous. It has to be, it is possible to travel from one point to any other point without crossing the district or boundary. And then also, when we're talking about political lines, we're not talking about Republican, Democrat here. The political boundaries are defined as county lines, city lines, county magisterial and election districts, voting precincts. We're not talking about Republican and Democrat. The communities of interest must also be taken into account. Districts should avoid dividing communities of interest while not violating other criteria. Obviously, we have to take into account the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. We have to take into account all state and federal laws to ensure our minority communities are properly represented.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could I
Senator
interrupt
Eben.
just on that particular point on the racial piece? First
Do you
off,
mind if I come back to it?
okay.
Do you mind?
Okay, that's
Finish my
fine.
thought? I'm sorry, I'm on a roll, but I am happy to answer your question in just a second. The last and probably the most important piece, I think, of this bill, which is different from the Suderline Chase bill, is that similar to the McClellan bill, in which I support Senator McClellan in this, is that I do feel that we should take out the political data that we use. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. R&D and I and so forth should be taken out of this. We need to allow the people to elect us instead of the other way around. And I feel like this bill allows them to do that, but also allows the General Assembly to still fulfill its rightful constitutional duty to draw those lines. The independent commission models that you see do not do that. They take the constitutional right and privilege that has been in our Constitution I don't know when it wasn't that way, would be taken away from the General Assembly, and that gives me a lot of heartburn, because as I've researched other agency bills like economic development authorities, don't get me started on that. We have situations throughout the Commonwealth where we have people who are appointed by elected officials who end up doing the dirty work, if you will, of those that they elect, and they're not held accountable, and we need to put an end to that. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'm free to answer questions such as Senator
Okay,
Evans'
Senator
bill.
Eben.
Yeah, I just had two questions that came to mind. First, you were talking about how this precludes a commission, and this is a criteria bill. The way I read it, it doesn't say that who will draw the lines. The Constitution says that. So this bill doesn't really, in my mind, go against, say, who's going to draw it or not. But the other piece that I was very concerned about, you said you supported Sarah McClellan's bill. It says on line 27, you said it was obvious that we're going to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, but then you've got any other laws such as addressing racial and ethnic fairness. But yet we have a chance right here to write in a law dealing with racial and ethnic fairness beyond what is currently interpreted as the Voting Rights Act and what the courts have currently held up as the Equal Protection Clause. And I just want to know why you don't have it written in there if we want to have the racial piece kind of cemented in.
I'm happy to do that.
Is there any other member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak on behalf of the bill? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Is there any other debate from the committee? Observations? Committee operates on a motion. Senator Cosgrove.
Madam Chairman, we have 3 bills that are dealing with the same subject matter. We've already passed Senator Suderline's bill. It would be my recommendation that we, let's not muddy up the waters that we have already stirred. I would make a motion that we roll this bill into Senator Suderline's bill. And then
Senator Cosgrove, I had discussed that with the patron previously, and she did not wish to have a bill rolled in. She just wanted an up or down vote. I think that's been the challenge with dealing with multiple vehicles that are so different from each other and then trying to pick and choose between the two.
an up or down.
So
Madam
she said
Chairman, I
earlier.
move that we vote on the bill.
Okay. So is that a PBI or is that a motion to report or is that what is your motion?
Oh, we're supposed to adopt an amendment.
Do you have an amendment? Meg,
Yes.
do we have an amendment?
Madam Chair, Senator Chase had spoken with me about some language she'd like to add. We'll have to sort of adopt this in concept because it's lifting from something that created a commission. But she wants to include some language that provides for some, it is on. I got a green light. Is it not working? So this will add in some language dealing with some transparency concerns about meetings being open to the public, public hearings in advance of adopting a redistricting plan, a website being maintained that will provide information to the general public about the redistricting plan. And this website would also be capable of receiving comments and proposals from citizens. It's language that we're going to see later in Senator Hanger's constitutional amendment that we'll just have to sort of adopt in concept today to find a way to the right words. It'll be a slightly different context.
Okay.
Good job.
I think the committee understands generally what the amendment is. It adds this additional layer of a process. So let me just ask for someone to move the amendment, and then we can vote on the whole bill.
So moved, Madam.
Okay. The motion has been made and properly seconded to adopt the amendment. All in favor, please vote aye. Oh, sorry, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So now we have the bill before us with the amended language. Let me ask again, is there a motion?
Madam Chairman,
Senator Cosgrove.
I move to PBI.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to pass by indefinitely Senate Bill 1003. All in favor, please vote aye.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. G-Staff is a yes. Hold on, how do I do that? Hit it again? Okay, got it.
All right.
Sorry, I can't
12,
work my
noes 2.
can't work my computer.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chase.
All right.
Okay, that concludes the criteria section. The next section on redistricting bills are constitutional amendments. And just by way of explanation, the way this works is the committee considers the constitutional amendments. My goal has been that we report a vehicle that we get some consensus on, but assuming we report a vehicle, that obviously goes to the legislature. We have an intervening election, and then we have to come back and vote on this again. So we have now, otherwise we have a long time to wait before we can actually take this up and have it be timely. So I would encourage the members to look at the side-by-side that we have prepared. I think everybody has seen it. We have SJ 306, 300, 305, and 274. And I'm going to start with SJ 306, which is Senator Barker's and Senator Saslaw's bill.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Senator Sproul.
could I make a comment and say what's on my heart first,
Of course.
if you don't mind? To my colleagues and to those who are out there, listen very carefully what I have to say. I have to use this watch. I have a speech impediment. I left my beads, so I have to use this watch. I want you to listen very carefully what I have to say. You have three bills. I'm talking about the two Democratic bills. And they are fine bills. Against my caucus for a long time, I said to my caucus that growing up in the projects, and I was told, if you ever become a little something, never forget where you come from. Point one. I even said a couple of years ago to the Democrats that I was black before I was a Democrat. Point two. Jim Turpin, my friend sitting right there, he came to me with a bill, and I said, Jim, we've been friends. I said, you come to my office, you got all old white men. I said, where are the women, the white women? Where are the young white men? Where are the blacks? And I said, now you remember now, I got to look out for everybody, but I got to look out for my folks first. I don't care about no party. Jim did that. Now, point two. Last night, and I'm real upset with the Democrats, my party. Last night, we met last night. And whenever I want to ask a question to my party, somebody else asks a question, and then they change the subject. And I said a few curse words. And I said, wait a minute. This is important to everybody, but particularly to me and my folks. I'm talking about Democrats now. And I don't care about Democrats, Republicans, because I'm here to look out for everybody, but I'm here to make sure that black folks are protected first. Why are you saying this, bro? And coming to my office in 1887, on my wall, I have 12 black men on my wall that were elected 1 year from 1887 to 1888. From that time to 1967, we have not had a black in this General Assembly. To 1967, that was Fergus Reed. Now, so I want a bill that protects everybody. That's what I want. I'm not here to defend no Democrats, no Republicans. I'm here to make sure that black folks get a fair share like everybody else. Now, what we have now. So last night, when my colleagues were arguing last night, and I said, if we have two bills before us, I said, why is it that we have not discussed these bills together? Because my chairman, Mamie Locke, sitting there, along with the Republican hanger, they have a bill sitting there that I know about. Jim Turpin just explained that to me. We got another bill coming up by my friend here that no one talked to me about. Am I supposed to support it because he's a Democrat? No. So Jim Turpin came to me and explained to me, and to answer my question, I'm going to support this. And I said to them, well, I'm going to support it all. So right now, I always converse with my friend John Cosgrove. I said, John, I want to get the heck out of the Democratic Party. I said that to him because I truly believe that when you ask a question, that it should be answered. And that's all I wanted. All I wanted, I just asked a question. And twice on this important document, I asked the Democratic caucus a question, and they egged me twice. I got up and left out. So I'm saying this to y'all, let you know is that how now that I have the chairman of the Democratic Committee get up with the bill with the fine Republican and another Democrat get up to present a bill. You got two Democrats. Now, which one do I supposed to support? You understand where I'm coming from? So I'm going to vote for his bill. What I'm asking my colleagues on this here is to please vote with me also for what do you call it, 121, whatever it is. That's the right thing to do. And to y'all is that it is time for us in Virginia to make sure that all people are treated fairly and right. Don't vote for a bill, in particular in this case, because they favor any party. Vote what's right for the people of Virginia. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to make sure it's done right. But when they go home, I want to make sure that I tell my family I never forgot where I come from. Thank you very much.
Senator Sproul, thank you for your comments. And I would just like to make a couple observations about what you stated, and that is that we have a challenge before us, and I think the way we're going to do this will solve your problem, which is you wish to vote on each one, and I believe either support or not support different bills, which is why we have struggled with, as a procedural matter, Senator Barker, how to actually hear these bills, because they are very different from each other. We have more than one vehicle, and the option is to hear them all together, and then for this committee to sit here and try to mush into pieces what it is that each person likes about each one. And having discussions with the patrons, it was clear that they and the members of the committee didn't think that was going to be very efficient. That then becomes a work group. That makes this committee do the work of a committee that probably should meet for several months to look at all the pieces and organize it and agree, is it 3, who gets the strike? It's really complicated. And so to your point, Senator Sproul, you'll have a chance to vote on each of them. And then my goal is at the end, should we have a vehicle, and I hope we will, believe we will, a vehicle that advances as a redistricting reform commission resolution that would then go to the voters, that when we have one that leaves this body, the people who wish to be added, those who are on bills, they will be chief co-patrons, and the bill will then proceed. But that's the procedurally fair way to have each bill heard standalone, and then members who want to vote for all of them, if you'd like to have that option. Okay. So Senator Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm here to present Senate Joint Resolution 306, which is one of the constitutional amendment proposals. I do have a substitute here and ask that that be distributed.
Madam Chair, I'd move the substitute.
Okay. The motion's been made properly seconded to adopt the substitute for Senate Joint Resolution 306. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so now the substitute is properly before us, and if you would like to explain.
Yes.
The substitute.
The substitute has one addition to the bill that was introduced. It's on lines 23 through 28. There is language addressing one of the issues that the senator from Northern Chesapeake talked about in terms of recognizing the importance of it dealing with the racial and ethnic issues there. That was not included in the introduced bill because we were working with a number of people to try to come up with the best language. And what you have before us is where we are on that process right now. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but if someone has a better idea, we'd certainly be happy to look at that as going forward on things. One of the things that I think is important is that we wanted to go beyond just what was in the criteria bill that we considered last year of looking at the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act, and particularly to do that because of the challenges that the Voting Rights Act has faced in recent years. It's been due for being redone at the congressional level. That has not happened. As a result of that, when that did not happen over an extended period of time, the Supreme Court struck down a major provision of the Voting Rights Act.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Deeds.
if I'm correct, then, when we look at our side by side, your bill is the only one of the three redistricting amendments that doesn't have criteria listed. But this incorporates some reference, some to the criteria being you want to make sure that laws ensure racial and ethnic diversity are respected.
Yes, that is included, and I'll come to sort of an explanation of how we came to propose to deal with the criteria overall. But what we did there was include an additional sentence, which is on lines 27 and 28, that make it clear that districts shall provide, where practicable, opportunities for racial and ethnic communities to elect the candidates of their choice. And we wanted to do that because although that is something that is effectively required in the Voting Rights Act, if the Voting Rights Act went away, we wanted to make sure we had language that would protect in Virginia that opportunity for those from racial and ethnic minorities to be able to select a candidate of their choice. So we have addressed that issue, which is why that is, why that was added in that particular way. What we are proposing here, and I'll go through the highlights of the different elements of the bill here and what the proposal is. First of all, it would establish a redistricting commission. The redistricting commission would have 16 members. It would be evenly divided, 8 members who are citizen members of the commission and 8 members who are legislators. Of the eight members who are citizen members would be selected by the same process that is proposed in Senator Hanger's bill related to the One Virginia 2021 group. What it would have there is of those 8 members, 2 of those would be some individuals identified as Democrats, 2 would be individuals identified as Republicans, and 4 would be individuals identified as independents. So the effort would be to make sure that we had balance of the 8 citizen members of the commission. In addition, what we would have is 8 legislators, 4 of whom would be senators, 4 of whom would be delegates, and those would constitute 2 from the Senate who are Republican, 2 from the Senate who are Democrat, 2 from the House who are Republican, and 2 from the House who are Democrat. So what you would end up with is 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. One of the critical things is that I set about to do is exactly what Senator Spruill was talking about, the senator from Northern Chesapeake, that we need to do what's in the best interest of all of the affected parties, of all the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We need to make sure that we are not empowering or disenfranchising, whether intentionally or not, people from one part of the state, people from one geographic area, from people from one political party, people from, from different perspectives there. But we are getting balance in terms of the overall representation, which I think is critical to making us be the most effective General Assembly that we can be. And partly to ensure that nobody can dictate to the rest of the group. Republicans can't dictate to Democrats, Democrats can't dictate to Republicans, the legislators can't dictate to the citizens can't dictate to the legislators. Because what is required is that for the citizen members, you have to have 6 of the 8 citizen members vote for a final plan that is prepared for congressional districts, state Senate districts, and House of Delegate districts. You also have to have 6 members of the General Assembly who, the 8 members of the General Assembly, vote for that. So what it means is that you cannot have one political party dictating if they happen to have strong influence on the citizen members. You have to have basic balance where you have not only 4 members of one party, but at least 2 members of the other party to agree to something, or 3 and 3 in terms of that. You also have to have the citizen members, 6 of the 8 citizen members, so the legislators, whether it be they Republican or Democrat or whether they be some combination of those, cannot dictate to the citizen members. You can have all 8 legislators sign on to something, but if you get only 5 citizen members, you do not have a plan. So what I think this does is everybody's interests are protected, and it's something that makes this, this proposal somewhat different from others in terms of how we go forward with things there, that we are intentionally setting out to protect the interest across the Commonwealth, and many of which, are the types of things that the senator from Northern Chesapeake talked about. One other difference that we have with this proposal compared to the other 2 proposals that are with us is that the other 2 proposals basically have a commission that draws the plan, and that's it. That's the end of the process. What we have proposed in our bill is to have plans developed by this commission with 6 of the 8 citizens and 6 of the 8 legislators supporting it, but then to have that plan go back to the General Assembly, not for the General Assembly to change the plan to what the General Assembly wants, but to have the General Assembly vote up or down on a plan. That, I believe, is critical for a couple of reasons. One is it ensures that there's some input in that process that makes sure that another check and balance on things. The second is that right now we are in a situation that just as the Voting Rights Act is at risk right now, and there have been parts of it have been eliminated as a result of Supreme Court action. There is a very good chance that the U.S. Supreme Court will make a decision that you cannot have an independent commission that has no legislative involvement in the process. That is the position of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, Chief Justice Roberts. He's made his position very clear. In the past, there was partly because of Justice Kennedy being on the court, he did not have 5 votes to be able to get that adopted as a position. But there is a very good chance that there now would be 5 votes to be able to make that position, and to be able to say that under the U.S. Constitution, which specifically refers to state legislatures drawing congressional districts, that you need to have, the legislature has to have a role in the process. What this does is this gives the legislature no role in picking the citizen members. It means that the citizens have to have a voice to have 6 of the 8 citizen members adopt and vote for a plan for it to be adopted. But then it would go back to the General Assembly for the General Assembly to make a final up or down vote on the plan. It again provides protection in terms of making sure that it is a balanced plan that can pass in the Assembly overall. So that is a second major category of what we have in there. As it relates to the issue that had been raised earlier by the senator from Bath, we did not put in, other than the one criterion related to racial and ethnic minorities, we did not put in additional criteria. There are already criteria in the Constitution. They are compactness and contiguity. So those are already in the Constitution, and we to make no changes to that. So we leave those in the Constitution. However, we believe that in general, it is better to have criteria be something that is handled through legislation at the General Assembly level rather than incorporated in a constitutional amendment. So that if there are perceptions of criteria not being fully all of what you want or not being the best criteria, you don't have to go through changing an entire constitutional amendment. You can pass legislation to do that. So consequently, we have not included a lot of the additional criteria that are in the other 2 in the constitutional amendment because we believe that is more appropriate to be handled in legislation such as the criteria bills that Senator Suetterlein, Senator Chase, and Senator McClellan proposed here today. The one exception we made, one area where we did not follow that was on the issue of the racial and ethnic minorities, and we felt that that was so fundamental to fairness of this process and making sure that everybody's interests are protected to have that be in the Constitution, and so we have included that in there. That's essentially what we have in our bill. One of the things we try to do is to be able to come up with an approach that we think will lead to the best outcomes, but not to, in effect, put too many restrictions in terms of how the commission goes about developing its bills, so that it can take account of things that are relevant to the time that you are making the decisions and drawing the maps, and based upon issues that relate to different parts of the Commonwealth, and making sure that we get fair representation throughout the Commonwealth in there. One of the things that I think is important is that even in criteria bills, I think it's good to look at how the types of things you take into consideration. But I think one of the things we try to not do, other than as it relates to the racial and ethnic minorities, is not use the word practicable, because people use that word in a very general way. And practicable is a word that when you look it up in the definition, it means you have to do it. As long as you can do it, you have to do it. And so what it does is in essence, in this case, if you're saying everything has to be practicable, basically what you're saying is that there is very little flexibility provided in drawing the districts. We think it's best with everybody's interest protected. So if one side's interest is not protected in the bill, You vote against it, it doesn't become law. If the citizens' interests are not protected, they can vote against it, or even if five of the 8 vote for it, it still doesn't become law. The same to the two political parties, to the members of the General Assembly that are on there. Both of those political parties are fully protected in terms of being able to come up with something. So we think this is a fair and balanced approach to it. We think it provides a lot of protections, a lot of checks and balances in there that can help us get to the best decision for the Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you. I hope everybody here has taken down every last detail, because there's going to be a quiz on this side-by-side. Okay, thank you, Senator Barker. You did a really good job explaining that.
Thank you.
I think the first thing to ask is, are there any members of the committee, and I see fingers going up, so I'm going to ask you, Senator Spruill, and then you, Senator Eben.
Yes.
That are picked by the Senate, who would pick those 4?
The 4 members would be appointed by the majority and minority leaders. So you would have both of the two political parties selecting 2 of their members to comprise the 4 people from the Senate, and it would be the Speaker and the leader of the minority party in the House.
Second question, Madam Chairman.
Yes,
So
Senator Spruill.
if they pick someone, can the rest of the members of their party object to saying we don't want this person, we want somebody else? Are they able to do that? We have to rely on what they say.
Madam Chair, Senator Spruill, in essence, they are the individuals, because some individual or some process has to be set up to make those appointments to provide that. But I guarantee you, if there is a significant element of a particular political party's caucus that is not happy, all you got to do is vote against the bill in the end, and you have a significant leverage over that process there. So I think that we are very unlikely to come up with a composition of 4 senators who would not reflect the Senate's perspectives overall on this.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Okay, Senator Eben.
Yes, I want to thank Senator Barker for the presentation. It is, I think I get it now. But I do have a question on a potential amendment that I don't know if you'd be friendly to. On the other bill, the hanger lock bill, which was HJ 274, they have as the end of their bill what I'd call a transparency kind of clause, F, G, and A. I'm sorry, it's F and G. It says all members of the commission shall be open to the public. Prior to proposing any redistricting plans and prior to voting on redistricting plans, the commission shall hold at least 3 public hearings in different parts of the Commonwealth, and so on. It talks about them maintaining a website, receiving comments, be capable of receiving comments by citizens, publish their proposed plan before it's voted on the commission's website, and so on. It talks about designating by law a state agency to provide logistical and technical support, and that their records actually are open to the public. And I don't know if you're open to that.
Well, it's certainly, Madam Chair, Senator Eben, I have no opposition to that whatsoever. The question is whether you want to put that in a constitutional amendment or whether you want to put it in the criteria bill. And either of those would be fine with me.
I would move that we put it in the actual amendment as the other one was. Just to be clear that this be, since we're putting constitutional amendments at the bottom of the ballot anyway, so people don't have to read every word if they choose not to, I think this would be important enough to have it in there.
Senator Barker, will you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Sure, I would be happy.
Seems pretty friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Adam's
I don't
pretty
care,
friendly.
I don't care whether it. I think it's good policy. I think it's good for the Commonwealth. I think it's good for this process. I think it's good for building public support for the outcomes of this. And I don't care whether it's in the constitutional amendment or in the criteria bill.
So, Madam Chair, that's lines 150.
Senator Deeds, yes.
That's lines 152 through 167
Of the other bill.
of the other bill.
Okay. FJ
274.
including paragraph.
That's what it is.
Yes, sir.
Maybe before we vote on this, we want to hear people who, well, go ahead. Senator Deeds, were you finished?
Yes, ma'am. I just
Okay. Senator Howell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just concerned about putting this level of specificity into the Constitution. I mean, that it would be most unusual. That's the kind of thing that we typically do in the code, not the Constitution itself. I have no idea with no opposition to the thrust of it, the goal of it, anything, but actually making that part of the Constitution troubles me.
Okay, so I think we have a motion to adopt the amendment. Is that motion seconded? Is there a second on that motion? Senator Sproul.
So where are we putting it?
So what we're doing is we're taking the transparency language and adding it to
This
this constitutional amendment, and it would be added at the end.
Right.
Is there a second? No second? I like the transparency language.
Please put it in the criteria bill then, if you don't put it in the constitutional amendment.
I like the criteria. I like the transparency language.
Yes, I agree.
But I'm not going to ask that go to a vote because clearly
Yeah.
there's a minority. Okay. So he's withdrawn the motion. Next, I'm going to ask, well, first, are there any other members of the committee that have a question for the patron before we hear from people in the audience? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of Senator Barker's constitutional amendment? Well, don't everybody stampede up here at one time, for heaven's
Madam
sakes.
Chair, I just had one question.
Senator
sir.
Reeves, yes.
Senator Barker?
Yes.
Near the end of your bill, it talks about fails to act or vetoes a bill embodying a plan submitted to the commissioner and adopted by the General Assembly with a deadline set forth in subsection E. The chairman of the commission shall promptly certify the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia such bill has occurred. I'm assuming you've checked with the Supreme Court of Virginia. They're okay with this bill and having that, because sometimes I think the judicial branch doesn't want anything to do with the legislative branch, and now we're gonna dump this. I'll use another term, pile of.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Senator Reeves, in the past, when I had some role for the Supreme Court to play, they objected to that. This does not provide a role for them. It just says you notify them and establishes that whatever judicial process would apply would go forward at that point. And the reason that is critical here is because we have odd year elections. So therefore, in a year ending in one, that's just 2011, 2021, 2031, we will have a very short period of time. We get the data from the U.S. Census Bureau, usually in mid to late February, and this provides a very quick turnaround time to go through this whole process with the transparency language that, if not in the constitutional amendment, presumably will be in the criteria bill to move forward on it. And if we are not able to come up with something that works, basically we have to get to court pretty quickly to be able to have districts in which elections could be held in that particular year. If we were like many other states and wouldn't have our elections until a year ending in two, we would have more time to deal with it and develop in effect, another attempt to be made at it. But that, I think, would be very difficult to accomplish here.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Reeves.
Is somebody here from the Supreme Court?
No.
Anyone? They always show up to courts of
Here
justice.
she is.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Could
It
you
would be
maybe-
sad if you could not weigh in on redistricting in this amendment.
Could you just
Please.
maybe elaborate, Madam Chair, if you could just elaborate as to the what if, because we have what ifs happen all the time where we don't do stuff we're supposed to do, what that next step is once we hand you this and we haven't voted it. What plans do you have in place for the Supreme Court to make this happen?
So, Madam Chair, Senator Reeves, Alyssa Padden with the Office of the Executive Secretary. I'm just reviewing the substitute now. I had not previously seen it. My understanding was that we were fine with the procedures in the introduced bill, and
This doesn't change that.
and so if this doesn't change that, then there have not been any concerns raised as a result of that process. I can't speak to what the intent is there as to how those procedures would be handled in the court if they are raised, but it did not, on initial review, did not raise any concerns for the court.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator, go ahead, Senator Barker, and then
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Edwards.
just to give you one bit
Yes.
of additional information, we did check with the Department of Elections to see if, we go forward, with something here in 2021, what would be sort of the latest that you could hold a primary to be ready for a November election. And because the November election in 2021 happens to occur early in the first week of November, basically you're talking about around August 21st or 22nd would be the latest that you could hold a primary. So there's not a whole lot of time between the time you get the information in February, you go through all the hearings and everything else that gets you legislation, presumably sometime in April or so. And if it doesn't move forward then, it's almost impossible to come back and get it resolved without having to go through the court process.
Okay. Senator Reeves says he's good. Senator Edwards.
I'm a little confused on lines 103 to the end. First of all, it says, and after the certification is submitted to the Supreme Court, Chief Justice, and the district should be decided by judicial decision. What does that mean?
That means that basically there would have to be action taken to go to the courts through whatever process is established by the courts, whether it goes through a circuit court. And historically, these things have often been handled at the circuit court level here in the city of Richmond, that would be where you would file to go forward with trying to get the court.
Let me be clearer then, looking at line little f, if the commission fails to submit a plan, et cetera, you're saying if the commission fails to submit a plan, you punt to the courts to decide all legislative and congressional districts?
That is correct. If we're going to have a process, what we don't want to do, I think, is set it up so that if the commission doesn't come up with a plan, the fallback is that we go back to the legislature and the legislature draws the plan. I don't want to set up a process that provides an incentive for the 8 legislators to not vote for a plan so that they can draw their own plan.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Edwards.
So you're saying there's nothing in here that grants the General Assembly, which is the way it is now in the Constitution, the right to decide what the district should look like?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Senator Edwards, the only role for the General Assembly in this process, other than picking 8 of the members of the commission, is that once the plans have been developed, that they then have to come back to the General Assembly for an up or down vote. And if the General Assembly doesn't get to make amendments to the bills.
And if the decision is no, then what?
Then just
goes to the courts?
Yeah, then it goes to the courts. Basically, if the commission can't come up with a plan, or if the General Assembly votes no, or if the governor vetoes the plan, in any of those 3 situations, you go to court, because we don't have time, since we have elections coming up that November, and we will have to have primaries in August.
Madam Chair, is there any place in the country that does this, like this? Any other state?
Madam Chair and Senator Edwards, this is a fairly common procedure here. And frequently you do have situations where the legislature is drawing the plans and they can't come up with, agree on a plan. And then what happens is the court puts the plan in place. For example, in 2001, and in Colorado, you had, I forget, one of the legislative bodies was Republican controlled, the other was Democratic controlled. They couldn't reach agreement on anything. The courts then stepped in and drew the plans for the congressional districts as well as for all the legislative districts. After one party got in control, they tried to draw a new one, and the court said, no, you had your chance, you blew it, you don't get it, you're stuck with that for 10 years. So
Madam Chair, in
Senator
Virginia,
Edwards.
It's in our case, we went to court, both the congressional districts and the House of Delegates districts, and the courts threw it out and then gave the General Assembly a time to do it, and they didn't do it, then it went to the courts.
Yeah, obviously that was a different situation because that wasn't with the decennial redistricting. That was that subsequent to the decennial redistricting, which is still in place right now. The districts on the House of Delegates lines, and the congressional lines were there for 2012, 2014, and it wasn't until 2016 that they were changed. So this is not unusual here.
Madam Chair.
Senator Edwards.
This is a radical change from what the law is today. The General Assembly's role is only to pick the people, and only to a limited extent, the way it's done here, and then to vote up or down, and that's it.
Madam Chair, Senator Edwards, that is correct. So what that does is that provides the General Assembly a role, 2 roles basically. One is the General Assembly has 8 members who are members of the General Assembly, equally 4 Republican and 4 Democrat, who are involved in the process of drawing the lines for all 3 maps. And then the second role is to vote up or down on each of those plans. So those are the 2 elements in here. And I think what it does, it provides some protections. It deals with the potential for the Supreme Court coming in with a ruling that the legislature has to approve the plan in the end and move things forward. But it doesn't give the legislature the type of control in the process that it has now and that it's had for many years.
Okay, is there any member who wants to speak? Okay, I ask for people who want to support. Yes.
One thing?
Sure, Senator Eben.
Yeah, just in response to what Senator Edwards said, if there was no court fallback, that would just give incentive to members of the commission to deadlock. If you didn't like it, what was going on, you could just deadlock it and then send it back if you're in the majority party.
Okay, I want to move on and ask. I had asked if there was anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the bill. Nobody stood up. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Okay. The committee, are there any other discussion by members of the committee? Anybody?
Madam Chair, I would
make a
move
motion?
to report the bill.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report SJ 306. All in favor, please vote aye. Oh, sorry. It's me.
John Edwards, you voting?
I think not. Oh, maybe he is. Okay, now the vote is closed.
Ayes 12, noes 1, abstentions 1.
Okay, so the next bill is going to be SJ, or actually resolution, is SJ 300. Senator Deeds, you want to go? So to be clear, we are voting on these individually. There may be members of the committee who wish to vote on all. There may be some who support one over the other. So I will ask you, Senator Deeds, perhaps unfairly, after you explain it, to explain why yours is better.
Okay, I'll explain why mine's better, because it takes the vote away from the General Assembly. And part of the problem is that people like you and me have a built-in conflict of interest in voting in these things. We vote to protect our interests when we're supposed to be protecting the interests of the people we represent. So this legislation is nothing new. You've seen it bunches of times before. I've introduced this legislation nearly every year since about 2003. What it does is it sets up a 13-person commission. Okay, none of the 13 could be in Congress or in the legislature or employees of Congress or the legislature. Essentially, 8 are picked by the Republican leadership in the legislature and the Republican state chair. 6 are picked by the Republicans, 6 are picked by the Democrats. Those 12 come together and they pick the 13th, and they have to pick the 13th. The 13th member is the chair, who has to be elected by at least 7 votes, and the chair cannot be affiliated with either political party and can't hold office anywhere. It has to have lived in Virginia for at least 5 years, and the bill is pretty specific about who the chair, what the chair is. Now, the criteria in the bill is pretty simple, but it's contained. It hadn't changed either. It's on lines 37 through 47, and the beauty of this criteria was basically plucked from the Iowa law. Iowa was the first state to really incorporate any sort of redistricting reform. They did it in the early 70s in response to litigation. And what this criteria amounts to is that the only thing you take into consideration is population. You can't consider incumbents. You can't consider political performance. You can't consider any addresses of candidates. You have to consider, and this is, well, it's not as explicit as the other bills about race and ethnicity. It says that you consider other matters as required by the federal Constitution, and of course, that's the Voting Rights Act. But it doesn't. I mean, you can think of that as you will, but that's how it handles that. It's pretty simple. The bill in lines 48 through 66 describe the whole process where the people are appointed. They have to be appointed by, I think, July 1 of the year of the census. The lines of 67, well, through the rest of the bill describe what they do. They have to have a transparent process, public hearings. They can have closed meetings for working together. But at the end of the day, by June 1 of next year or 3 months from the date they receive the redistricting information, if that's before June 1st, they have to produce a plan. They produce a plan that has to have at least 7 votes. So you're required to have some buy-in from everybody. Both the Democrats and Republicans have picked this independent chair. They work together over the course of 9 months to produce a plan, and 3 months after they get the material, they produce a plan, and that's it. The legislature doesn't vote on it. That's the main difference. The legislature doesn't vote on it. The governor can't veto it. That is the plan. The only if people are disgruntled with the process or disgruntled with the plan that this proposal creates, their only recourse is to file writ in the Supreme Court of Virginia. This is, not exactly the way anybody does it, but the criteria comes from from the Iowa law. The way the commission's set up comes from the New Jersey law. If other states can do this in a more fair way, we can do it.
Senator Deeds, I'm very familiar with this commission process because I introduced something almost identical in 2015.
I remember that.
Yes. So for those who are here, this is not our first rodeo, and we would like it to be our last. Okay. So is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this excellent constitutional amendment? Some of us have tried before. Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this constitutional amendment? Okay. Comes the Supreme Court. Actually, you do have somebody behind you. Sorry.
Madam Chair, Alyssa Haddon with the Office of the Executive Secretary, and I know Senator Deeds has had this bill several years in a row. We've reached out each year to communicate our concerns with this bill, and the concerns are not with regard to the policy, but with regard to how the bill is structured. It tasks the Supreme Court with choosing a chairperson if the committees are not able to agree, and then also assigns jurisdiction to the Supreme Court over any disputes involving the chairperson. So it builds in a conflict of interest as far as the courts are concerned, which could make it difficult to implement. And that has been the primary concern with how the bill is structured.
Okay. Senator Deeds.
And I understand that, but I don't really care. I don't know who else to give this responsibility to. And in my view, the legislature needs to be out of the process. And I understand the Supreme Court is elected by the legislature, and so they're not completely out of the process. But that was the best I could do.
Are you trying to say to the Supreme Court you don't care and they should get their own bill? Is that what you're trying to say here?
I can do that.
Because she does not want that responsibility.
They can do it. Well, too bad.
Okay.
Too bad.
Okay.
And I move to report the bill.
Okay. Before we act on that motion, I'm going to ask with some trepidation and ask you to be brief. Is there any member of the committee who has a question, an additional question for the patron, or wishes to speak about this before we vote? Senator Reeves.
So, Senator Deeds, so your bill just has the Voters' Rights Act and no other protections in it?
It's what it says, and this language is on line 46 when it's describing what you consider. It says only demographic information. You can't consider demographic information other than population counts except as required by the Constitution and laws of the United States. So I think that's sufficiently broad to require this commission to consider anything that the Constitution or the laws of the United States require.
So to answer your question, he does not have Voting Rights Act language in there.
It's not
generically.
specific.
Right.
So unlike Senator Barker's bill that we passed, he has districts shall provide where practicable opportunities for racial and ethnic communities to elect candidates of their choice. So that's pretty specific language saying that my colleague from Chesapeake, people would be represented there, whereas yours is based on overall Constitution and however Congress deems it. So theoretically, if we got rid of the Voters' Rights Act and some of those things, that would be washed out.
Well, that would be, theoretically, you could have a problem, but I think if you looked at his language in his bill, you've got the same problem because it says, and other laws as passed by the Congress or whatever.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment? Anybody else have a question? Senator Eben.
Committee's time.
No, you're
but
not.
I did want to ask the independent member of the commission. chosen by the other members.
Right.
How do you know they're an independent? Is this how they do it in Iowa or somewhere else?
I think this is this was drawn from the New Jersey statutes.
Okay, thank you.
This is the way they do it in New Jersey. Has to have lived here 5 years, can't be affiliated with either party, can't be affiliated with any branch of government, but has to be chosen by a majority of the membership.
Madam Chair,
Senator Edwards?
so there's no role for the General Assembly to vote up or down or anything like that?
There is no role for the General Assembly to be involved in this.
Is
And
there-
my view, and I understand it might be a minority view, but my view is that we have a built-in conflict of interest.
Okay, I understand. I'm just trying to figure this out. So after the commission makes a decision, you got something in here about if the plan is held declared unlawful, somebody could go to court, I
That's what the
suppose.
Supreme Court was fussing about, because
They don't
what
wanna do
this
it.
says is it is the only jurisdiction for a complaint against what the commission does is to the Supreme Court.
Or the federal courts.
Well, this says to the Supreme Court of Virginia, but I guess you can craft a federal suit
You would have
too.
to do that too,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, thanks.
Madam Chair,
Okay, committee operate, oh, yes, Senator Reeves.
Senator Deeds.
Yes, sir.
We have tried in vain to do party registration, and I truly believe there are independents in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but how do we know who's an independent without party registration?
Well, you know, because we have access to the voter files. We know what primaries people vote in. And in the communities where I live, I know who the Democrats are and the Republicans are because I go to events, go to political events, and I know who lines up on which side. I think if you get a group of 12 people that the legislature's appointed, they're going to be able to figure it out. They're not, and this requires that there be some agreement on both sides, because 7 people, when there are only 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans, 7 people have to vote for that chair. There's going to have to be some agreement between the sides that the person is not affiliated with either party. And I get what you're saying, that since there's no party registration, there's no real affiliation. But I would suggest that the affiliation is more than just a registration. The affiliation, and we can figure it out. We can look at VPAP and see who's contributed what to whomever. We can look at the Department of Elections and see who's voted in what primaries.
I got you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there anybody else who has a comment? Committee operates on a motion.
And I moved report.
Sorry, you already moved a report. Is there a second? Would there be perhaps a substitute motion to pass by indefinitely, if that's the,
I would make the motion to gently pass it by
okay.
indefinitely.
I guess the Supreme Court gets their way once. So the motion's been made and properly seconded to gently pass this by indefinitely. All in favor, please vote aye.
Madam Chair, I would just, before the vote is called, Madam Chair, I would just point out that this is the only legislation that's passed the Senate on redistricting reform in the past. It's passed it when the Democrats controlled it. It passed it when the Republicans controlled it. It passed it when we were 2020.
I understand. It's still open. Go ahead, Senator Redmond. You got all the time there.
Ayes 12, noes 1, 1 abstention.
Okay. So our third option is SJ 305, which is identical to SJ 274. If you would like to come forward. Describe the bill. It's identical. So I think probably the appropriate, rather than have you each explain it, we should probably just deal with that all at one time. It's an identical bill. Is that okay with you, Senator Hanger?
I think that will work. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. A little bit confused about process here because it appears you've already reported a bill. So what's the...
Well, we are giving people the option to vote for all of them, none of them, some of them, and then if we have 2 at the end, we are not going to report out 2. We'll actually sit here until we get to an agreement on 1.
Further question on process.
Yes.
Madam Chair. Just as Senator Deeds, I was under the impression that we were working on this as a joint project and they'd be rolled together at the end. He just killed his bill.
So what I would propose is that, again, everybody have the chance to vote up or down, and then at the end, the vehicle that emerges, everybody would be then added as a chief co-patron. That way, everybody gets credit, all the people who have worked on it. In some cases, like we had with the criteria, some people didn't want to be rolled in. They have very strong feelings for or against one of the constitutional amendment vehicles or one of the criteria vehicles. So we did not force people to roll in at this point.
Okay, will the numbers be rolled together?
The numbers, I guess what we would do is we'd report one, and then because those others are not the same, you couldn't really, well, I guess you could. Yeah, you could have one vehicle.
Madam Chairman,
Anyway, go ahead.
sensitivity, it appears there's some consensus that's been built here in the committee as far as where you're going to go, and I'm fine with that because that's your prerogative, because this is a big task. But there's also an advocacy that has started this conversation that I want to preserve, that I represent. And so I'd like to speak to that just briefly, if I could.
Please, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As Senator Deeds was indicating, there is something that I've worked on before. And as you recall, you and I together in 2017, this committee gave me the honor of carrying the constitutional amendment over to the House at a 7 o'clock morning. Well, in the morning, it didn't go anywhere, okay? Even though we had people there. There's a difference this year, Madam Chair. Something is going to happen. I can feel it in the air. And it didn't just happen because of something that you and I did or this committee did. It happened because a group of people got together, the bipartisan commission, and I represent that. And that's why I feel I might tend to be a little more aggressive here now, because I'm not representing something that I created. I'm representing something that a whole lot of people created. And to put before us, it's the Bipartisan Citizens Constitutional Amendment Drafting Committee, and supported by a statewide nonpartisan group, One Virginia 2021. So they came up with a plan. I was honored that they asked me as an individual representing one side of the political spectrum, and Mamie Locke, who had to scoot over to local government, so she's not right here at the moment, to do that. And then Senator Sturdivant liked the concept as well, and he has introduced the identical bill. There are two elements to getting legislation passed here, Madam Chair, as I would share with you all, as you all know well. You've got to come up with a plausible plan that works for the thinking of the members here, and also is something that can resonate with the public. But then the second part of that is advocacy, and that's why we're here where we are today. Nothing would pass again this year were it not for these groups taking the time and the effort and the advocacy that they put forward to stir this up statewide. And I believe you me, it is stirred up through their advocacy, through their paid advertisements, through their internet work that has been going on. They have 80% of the people in this state ready for us to do the right thing, and that is to remove gerrymandering from the process as much as we can. We can't take it out totally, but the people of this state want us to take it out. They want a system that where we cannot protect our own incumbency by our actions here. So that's what we need to come up with. Senator Barker's bill has drawn elements of the work of this group as he put it forward here. The bill that I have forward that the committee put together has a lot of specificity in it, some of which perhaps members of this group would not want to propose in a constitutional amendment. We've drawn a substitute if you like the concept and don't want all the specificity. I won't say that again because I can't say it well. But here's the deal. Here's the deal, Madam Chair. This, and I'm not going, I want to, there's a lot of advocacy here in this room for this, and I want to allow the people, a couple of the people with the limited time we have, to come forward and share a bit of why they're here, why they took their time over many, many months to put this together. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to call a couple of people forward, certainly.
Senator Hanger, absolutely. And I just want to make this point so that everybody is very clear. We are hearing all of these reform bills, and specifically these constitutional amendments, because of the engagement and the advocacy of so many people who have worked so hard. Right. And the challenge is not everybody agrees with every detail, but I do not in any way, because some pieces of it are popular and some have passed and some haven't, or that there's a difference of opinion on tiny pieces, to undermine that effort, because all of these folks have engaged and moved bills forward in the past, and we're only here because of them. So yes, I just want to make sure that's clear.
Madam Chair, the further comment that I would make in advocacy for it now in front of you all is that I am, as you all are well aware of the process, I don't want us to put forward something out of here that we narrow our options enough that we can't get it out of that other body. And so I've been aware of that as well, because that has been the obstacle. We've gotten it over there before, and it's not resonated with the individuals over there. We all are aware of the unique circumstance we're in, where we don't know who's going to be in control in the next cycle, other than the governor. And that is something that we should be concerned about in terms of what influence that he might control over the process as we move forward. But certainly, I'd first like to call on Wyatt Durrett, if I could.
Yes.
Madam Chair, question to you.
Senator
This is Senator Locke. She's also in favor of this bill.
Beg your pardon?
Senator Locke, is she in
Yes.
favor of this?
Yes,
She's a
she is
co-patron.
a chief co-patron. She had to run over to local government, so we've worked together on this.
We're good. I'm good. Thank you.
So Senator Locke is there as a hologram. You can't see her, but she is there. And she will be back from local government when he presses the button. Senator Sturtevant, before Wyatt Durrett goes, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. And this really is the hanger lock bill, but I've been a big supporter of One Virginia 2021 since the time I've been in the Senate, and wanted to introduce this bill as well, and hope to be included as a co-patron. But I think that the two things that really jump out to me about this amendment as opposed to the others is the level of additional transparency that go into the commission that is created by requiring those open public meetings of the commission, and requiring that the data and the maps that are drawn are available and open to the public. In my time in the General Assembly, seeing the process by which the districts were drawn in 2011, and then they have been subject to court challenge and revisions by consultants from California and other states outside of Virginia, is not a good process going forward. And no process is ever going to be perfect, of course, but we've got to do something different. And if we continue moving forward with what we have been doing, we'll only have more of the same, which is whichever party is in the majority drawing the lines, there will be court challenges and consultants, and that is not a democratic process, just as gerrymandering is not an appropriate democratic process. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
Wyatt Durrett, oh, sorry. Senator Reeves.
Senator, would you be adverse to working with Senator Abbott and drafting that for Senator Sutherland's bill on criteria, the transparency part?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I think that's the issue. There are some people who, at least in my informal discussions, have concerns about that level of specificity in the amendment, but would prefer that to be in criteria, which is the transparency, which is what Senator Howell had said previously, but I don't want to step on our discussion. I would like to have Wyatt Durrett have the opportunity to come up and offer an explanation, because I have the impression that nobody is as good as explaining it, perhaps, as. Come on up. You explained it to me in 5 minutes and I could understand it, so you can definitely explain to this group. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to be here. And after listening to all of the discussion, and I know that all of you have read these bills, and most of you have lived with this longer than I have. But my experience with it is unique in that I was able to chair a 10-person committee of 9 at least remarkable individuals. They were across the political spectrum, former legislators, former attorney general, 2 college professors, the father of the modern Constitution, Dick Howard from Virginia, the foremost election law authority in Virginia, Professor Rebecca Green from William and Mary. And working with those individuals, we discussed ad nauseum everything that you have discussed today. We worried with putting so much in the Constitution that should be in the statutes. We debated a commission. We debated the role of the legislature. We tried to address all of these things with a rationale as to why we were proposing what we were proposing. So with that in mind, let me share with you the reasons why we came up with the bill that we did, and why the provisions that you have discussed here today at least the rationale behind what we did. First of all, we recognize that the legislature should have a role of some kind in the redistricting process. The debate is over what that role should be, where it should start and where it should end. And so we concluded that when the lines are actually going to be drawn, and we really want to try to follow neutral criteria without any consideration of politics, that would be better done without legislative involvement, without the participation of legislators. Because as has been said repeatedly here, and let's face it, I was one of you at a point in my life and in my career. And you're here because of what you believe. You have values, you have principles, and you believe that you can articulate those and serve the people you represent. So obviously, you're going to look out for that when the districts are being drawn. And the more people you have in the legislature who share your views, the better able you are to promote them. And so that human nature being what it is, that is going to be uppermost in your mind, and that's not going to change. And so that's why we came up in favor of the independent commission made up of citizens only. The second thing that you've discussed here today that was critically important to us is transparency. And I know that there are honest differences of opinion about what should be in the Constitution and what should be in statutes, and I respect that. What I would ask you to consider is the critical importance of transparency to this process. And because public involvement is critical, public awareness is critical, public access is critical, public input is critical, and the inability to make decisions about where lines should be drawn without the public knowing why you're making those decisions is critical. And so something that is so important to the success of this effort in the view of the committee should be in the Constitution. And that's why we chose to put it there. Thirdly, I realize also that this is an important consideration. And Senator Chase, you addressed it eloquently. The role of the legislature, the Constitution does give authority to the legislature for redistricting. But that does not mean that the Constitution cannot be amended if it is the right thing to do. And ultimately, it is the people of Virginia that are going to decide whether the amendment you propose is going to become the part of the Constitution or not. And we know without any shadow of a doubt that 70 to 80% of the people that you represent want an independent commission. There's no question about that. And so the ultimate in democracy is giving the people of Virginia the opportunity to vote on it and to vote on a meaningful amendment. Finally, there's the question of the composition of the commission. And I will say that Senator Barker was gracious enough to actually come to one of our meetings. And I want to, first of all, acknowledge that, and secondly, thank you for that level of interest. And he presented his ideas to us, and we presented our ideas back at him. And obviously, we didn't quite reach agreement. But the reason why we didn't is what I've articulated already. And that is that we want the people who are making the decisions as to where the lines to be drawn to be motivated as much as humanly possible by following the criteria that we ask them to follow, and not trying to avoid following that criteria to achieve another goal. And that's why we want it to be citizens. A question has come up, how do you decide who's a Republican, who's a Democrat, who's an independent? That we left to you. We didn't put that in the constitutional amendment. We have ideas about how to do it. You can look at contributions, you can look at votes in primaries, you can look at Facebook, you can, I mean, it's almost unthinkable in today's world that we can't figure out who's primarily Republican, primarily Democrat, primarily an independent. You can do that. And you can set up criteria in the statutes that allows that to be done. So I think that's it for my prepared remarks or unprepared remarks, kind of reacting to the discussion that's been here today. But one other thing, the criteria. Why put the criteria in the Constitution and why are ours important? We have tried in our criteria to recognize what we believe to be all the members of the commission from all walks of life, setting up the importance of maintaining jurisdictional boundaries. And we recognize that you can't sometimes tell where Richmond stops and Henrico begins. And we know that that's not the only part of the state where that's going to be the case. And we know that communities of interest have value, and we recognize that as a secondary consideration. But in order to try to remove as much discretion and judgment out of this process and put in criteria that are concrete and that do have value, maintaining jurisdictional integrity and jurisdictional boundaries is an important consideration. And if that is the primary one and will be followed mostly, then you're going to achieve an awful lot of the other goals that you want. One very important criteria is the provision that no district can be drawn for the purpose of benefiting an incumbent or a political party or an individual or an entity. And that is a mandate. Why put the criteria, or at least some of them, in the Constitution? For the same reason we put everything else in a Constitution that we choose to put there, because we want it to endure. We want it to be permanent. We don't want it to be subject of the whim of a particular election and the ability of some General Assembly 3, 5, 6 years from now to change it. Give the people an opportunity to vote on whether they want to put these criteria into the Constitution or not by putting them in the amendment. That I would urge you to do that only because they are so important, and that we would want them in the Constitution, just like we have compactness, contiguity, equal population protections, and voting rights protections. Let me say one other thing, and then I really will stop. Federal law is going to control no matter what we do, no matter what we write into this constitutional amendment. Federal law will preempt it. So it's whether we want to put it in the constitutional amendment or not, we're going to be subject to federal law at the end of the day. And that's true for litigation too. If there's a deadlock, no matter what we write into a Virginia amendment, federal courts are always going to be available to anyone who wants to pursue litigation and who can meet federal standing requirements. So whether we like it or not, the federal law is going to control, and federal courts are always going to be there. So, Madam Chairman, thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is there any member of the committee who has a question for Wyatt Durrett? Anybody? Senator Edwards.
You have a question. The 5%, you could vary by no more than 5% from the ideal district population, right? Where'd you come up with that?
That's the current standard that the federal courts have set for state legislative districts.
I believe currently in Virginia it's 2%, isn't it?
Well, the criteria that the Senate put in 2011 by statute was 2%. The House put 1%. We decided to go with what the latitude allowed by federal courts. And the reason for that is because it makes it easier to follow the other criteria that you want to achieve. The more narrow you draw the population, sometimes the more difficult it is to meet the other criteria. So that's why we allowed the expansion of it in order to meet the other criteria set forth in the bill. You don't have to do it. You can make it more narrow than that.
Senator Howell.
Chairman, we were, just so you know what we were whispering about, I'm very concerned that 5% standard disadvantages Northern Virginia, which has very large jurisdictions and counties.
Well, this is what I would say to that, Senator Howell, is that we chose for the constitutional purposes to allow that much. That doesn't mean that you could not, by statute, at any given time, say, for this set of Senate districts, we're only going to allow 2%.
Is there anybody else? Senator Howell, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, but politically, that would be very difficult to do and get passed.
Well,
Anybody?
understand that the rationale for it was not because of a lack of respect, either for Northern Virginia, where I lived for a long time, or the mandate of equal population. It was to allow more flexibility for the other criteria. That's all.
Okay. If there's nobody on the committee who has a question, I'm going to ask, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, I just want to say that AAR supports this constitutional amendment. That's all I need to say.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, Senators Carol Nagel with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. And we definitely do support this and the values of it, the fairness of it, the transparency is very important, and the public input we feel is vital. So I thank the senators.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm Jessica Ackerman with the Virginia Municipal League, and we'd like to express our support.
Great. Thank you. Is there any, welcome.
Welcome, Madam Chairman and Senators Committee. I'm Danielle Sims with the League of Conservation Voters, and we also support the bill.
Great. Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Senator Hanger, are you going to clean up here?
I want to clarify. May I ask a
Senator
question?
Edwards.
As I understand it, the commissions, whatever they come up with, shall promptly transmit the district plans to the governor and the clerks of the House and the Senate. Such district plans should be final and not subject to amendment or veto by the governor or the General Assembly. So it's it. The commission makes the final decision. I guess you can always go to court somewhere if you're not happy with it, but that's it. General Assembly's role is just to select the members, and that's it?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Madam Chair, I think there are a lot of people here, I presume, if anyone who is here in support of the concept that's been advanced by the Bipartisan Commission, could we have them stand? Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair, you finally put mine up there.
It should have been up there the whole time.
No. Here's the deal. I really think you all have basically put your majority support behind a vehicle already. If I'm wrong on that, tell me. If not, I would prefer, rather than killing my bill, that you roll the bill into Senator Barker's bill by number, because these advocates are here for the work that this commission has done, and I would prefer that I could be a part of the process, that we shape it as much as possible to the direction they want it to go.
Okay. So is there,
I move that.
should we vote on this? I think perhaps we need to vote on the bill, and then maybe we come back to that piece, because I think we don't yet know.
I move the report, Madam Chairman.
Why don't you just roll it in?
Yeah.
You want to report, then we vote it in.
Yeah, I move that this bill be rolled into Senator Barker's bill with the two co-patrons, or however many co-patrons there are, chief co-patrons.
Okay. Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded.
Yeah, whoever's
right.
patrons be chief co-patrons.
To roll the bill together.
Roll the bill together into Senator Barker's bill.
Madam Chairman?
Right. Is there any discussion, any further discussion? Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
I guess I want everybody to understand, in rolling this bill into Senator Barker's bill, which we voted to advance,
This is the text of
this
this
then
bill.
becomes really Senator Barker's bill.
The text of it would be, right.
Well, the whole thing, besides just the patrons. That's a correct statement, right?
Right, that is
I just want
accurate.
everybody to
That is-
understand that. So this, quote, nonpartisan Virginia 2021 bill will basically be rolled into the language of Senator Barker's bipartisan redistricting bill, correct?
Right. So that's a good point. So to clarify for people who are here who might not understand that procedure, the motion is instead of a vote on this specifically, this substance, instead, this bill and substance would be rolled into Senator Barker's bill, and then Senator Barker's substance becomes the vehicle and the bill.
Madam Chair.
Just for purpose of clarification.
Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Senator Sproul.
Now, also, with that happening, then some of the stuff that this fine young man put before us and all this stuff, because we roll it in, I want to make sure that we still talking about some of the stuff that he just said to us, make sure that we would have the option to put some of this stuff into that bill. Am I right? No. To put into Senator Barker's bill.
Madam Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove.
I'd say to my friend from Chesapeake that no, basically the bill that's before the committee right now would really cease to exist. We would just have one vehicle, and that would be Senator Barker's bill. If it was to be amended, it would have to be either amended on the floor of the Senate or should it come out of the House in conference.
Madam Chair, my question, I'm just trying to get the information. I
Yes, Senator
understand,
Sproul.
I understand the Senator Barker bill, but I'm saying, but some of the things that you have said here, and I heard what he said, a lot of things he have said here, I like what has been put before us. I'm saying, I'm hoping that we can somehow amend some of this good stuff that you're saying and put there. If that's the case, then why are you going to amend something? Why are you going to amend some of the stuff to his bill when some of the fine things you have said would not be put into his bill?
The,
I want to put something into his bill.
Madam Chair, Senator Sturdivant would like an up or down vote on his bill. Maybe that can be the to test the waters here if you want to. He wants that done. Obviously, if I thought the bill could survive in this committee, I would try to advance mine. But I want the bill rolled in so we can continue to work on it. But if you're Senator, I think if that's in order, if y'all
Right.
want to.
I think as a procedural matter, so that everybody felt like they had a fair consideration of their pure substance of their bill. And again, we're trying to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good here, but you saw that with criteria and you're seeing that here. There were individuals who had said, I would like an up or down vote and not to roll it all in so that my substance doesn't get muddled with somebody else's and we're not doing this comparison here from the dais. So our goal was to either vote them up or vote them down and then let people be co-patrons. So go ahead, Senator Sturdivant.
And I thank you. I think with the amount of work that has gone into this One Virginia 2020-21 effort and the amount of work that has been done by them over the last many years, I think it's worthy of a vote and worthy of this committee's support. And I think the committee has reported Senator Barker's bill. I don't think that there's anything preventing this committee from also reporting this. And if it provides another vehicle for trying to accomplish the goal of having a better redistricting process, and things can be worked out over the next several days before there is a final vote on the floor. But I think, many of the folks who are here today are here on behalf of Virginia 2021 and in support of that, the work that went into that. And I think it's deserving of consideration by the committee, or an up or down vote.
Right.
Madam
you.
Chair?
I'd like it. Yeah, Senator Sproul.
Then, so I'm supporting 2021 bill. No disrespect to you, brother, but you okay, but I want to support that one. So I don't want him to use your bill as a test. Because I'm gonna vote no for yours. But I don't want you to use your bill as a test for something that he has that I'm supporting. So I'm confused, Madam Chair. I thought we were gonna do each one of them separately, because I don't want them to think that I'm not supporting yours, but I'm gonna vote for his.
Okay, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't believe we've ever put out 2 or 3 bills almost the same and then try to fight it out on the floor. And that being said, I'd make a motion to PBI SJ 305.
Okay, the motion's been made to pass by indefinitely SJ 305. So then the question becomes, because this is identical in language, do you first wish to roll 274 and 305 together because they are identical, or do you want to vote on those separately?
Separately.
Senator Sturdivant asked for a separate vote, so let's get
Okay.
them a separate vote.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so all in favor of passing by indefinitely SJ 305? Wait, I need a second. Did somebody second? Okay, motion's been made and properly seconded. All in favor of passing the bill by indefinitely, gently, please vote aye.
Ayes 8, noes 4, abstentions 2.
Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'll go back to my request that
Senator-
my bill be rolled in to
Okay.
Senator Barker's bill. Bye.
so, and if we do that, then we need a motion to reconsider. And
No, we don't.
No,
We have to have a
haven't
motion
acted
to
on mine yet.
reconsider it.
We
Pardon?
haven't acted on mine yet.
no, we have to reconsider Senator Barker's bill. If we are going to
Oh,
do
okay,
that, do you see
okay,
the
okay,
procedural point here?
Okay,
Let me
sure.
ask you this, would you be willing to be a chief co-patron on the Barker bill? Because rather than have to go back and unroll other votes that we did on previous bills and roll them together, would you be willing to go as the chief co-patron on Senator Barker's bill, carrying the water for 2021? And
I'm fine with it, other than, again, as
because
I
I
stated
want
the
it,
premise.
because then we have this issue of others who also had bills who could then all be chief co-patrons on the Barker bill.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator
I
Edwards.
think we just make a motion to roll Senator Hanger's bill and whoever else is chief co-patron into Senator Barker's bill to do that, because that's what he wants to do. And we've done that before.
Okay.
And the
So-
bill, I think, is,
You have to-
Senate
you have to
bill,
vote
I
to
move
do
that
that.
we roll Senate Joint Resolution 274 into, what's the number?
Do that.
Senate, into Senate Joint Resolution 306?
Right.
Is that, okay. Yeah. And the patrons be chief co-patrons.
Senator Howell.
Substitute motion. I believe the proper way to do this is to reconsider the vote by which we pass Senator Barker's bill. And I will make that motion, but we will then put yours into it and vote for it.
Second. Thank you. That works.
Madam Chairman.
You don't have to do it that way. I didn't.
We have a motion on the floor, but Madam Chairman.
Sorry, Senator Cosgrove. I apologize. I was conferring with Senator Howell. My mistake, my fault. Senator Cosgrove.
Oh, there's a motion properly before the committee. I guess where I'm going with this is we have already voted for Senator Barker's bill. If this is an attempt to meld into Senator Barker's bill in order to morph it into the quote nonpartisan 2021 unquote bill, then I have a problem with it.
No, it's not. Not that's
So,
what it
so
did.
the question becomes, do you want an up or down vote? That's the issue, because we have individual vehicles, and we haven't gone back and rolled anybody else's.
All right.
The idea is you could get an up or down vote on this and then add them as chief co-patrons.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
So
there's
is your
a motion.
substitute motion,
No, that's not a substitute motion. I'm just saying there's a motion on the floor.
or I'm sorry, your motion was to,
There,
I have no motion.
I'm not trying to go where you said there. I'm just, the full text of the bill would be Senator Barker's. It would just, I want to bring this advocacy group along as much as I can on this. Senator Barker actually used a portion of their work in his bill and added some things, and I'm fine with that. You know,
right.
that
And just to be clear, this is not picking any advocacy group over another advocacy
No.
group. We're picking one vehicle and hoping
Right.
that
Right.
all of the advocacy community
Right,
that supports
right,
redistricting reform will be involved and advocate for reform and advocate for a commission.
That's
So we're not trying to split
Right.
hairs by which
No.
one or whose is better, but we're trying to get one vehicle out.
Right.
So,
And I'm not, don't have ulterior motives about
Right,
that.
I
Just-
understand.
Just with just to roll it in there.
okay, so your motion was, oh, you didn't make a motion.
Senator Howell made a motion.
All right, your, Okay. Okay. Is there a second or is there? Okay. So the motion's been made and properly seconded to reconsider the Barker bill so that we can add this bill. The committee's going to be at ease for 1 second while I have an explanation for someone who just came late, so hold on. So just for purposes of clarification, while we are hemming and hawing up here, is that we're trying to figure out, to be fair, who would be a chief co-patron and who wouldn't. I conferred with Senator Deeds. He does not wish to be rolled in. Senator Sturdivant did not wish to be rolled in. Is that right? He wanted an up or down vote, and he got it. And so, and thank you, Senator Locke. You did a heck of a job here. As a hologram, you were amazing. Women like you can be in two places at one time. She did an amazing job.
Madam Clerk.
Clerk.
Senator Chase.
Respectfully, I have to leave to go present a bill on local governments.
They were asking
Okay.
for, they were asking for you.
Okay. So did you leave a proxy? Okay. So the substitute motion from Senator Howell is to not act on this bill, but instead to go back to Senator Barker's bill and reconsider the vote by which we reported Senator Barker's bill. And there was a second. Okay, so that's the vote before us.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
just one more thing. Just so everybody knows, I have never, ever, ever voted for a redistricting bill, ever, until today, on Senator Barker's bill. I'm not sure I'll vote again. I'm just telling you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not interested in losing any votes here. And for those of you in the audience who don't appreciate this process before we got here to the dais, it's been a lot of work to get a vehicle out and get a vehicle that will live. So, with that, maybe we reconsider. She voted for the Barker.
Madam Chair, we have a vote, we have a motion on the floor.
Okay, great. We have a motion on the floor. Sorry. All in favor, please vote aye. Oh, sorry, this is reconsideration. This is reconsideration. You guys, for reconsideration? Okay, sorry, hold on.
As 8, no 6.
Wait, I didn't vote for December. Can you please?
You did.
Right, okay. All right. So now the Barker bill is in front of us, and now you may want to renew your motion. Senator Cosgrove, your point was you're not going to vote for a second one, correct? So,
Madam Chairman, I made no motion.
right, this is
I just
separate.
said
This
I
is
didn't
just
want to vote on it.
reconsideration right now.
No, we've reconsidered.
Let's
Okay,
make the motion.
okay. So the vote now is whether or not,
To roll my bill in.
right,
My
to
bill
roll
in.
274 into to 306.
And we'll add Senators Hanger and Locke as chief co-patrons.
Right. Okay. To be clear, if this is an issue and it fails because we are going to lose support for the larger reform measure, if this fails, we still have the option to advance the other bill with you as chief co-patron,
Right.
even if it doesn't roll in. I just want to be clear about that.
Right.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would only ask, why would that fail? We've conceded to Senator Barker's bill.
Right, but we have some people up here who don't want to vote, who we may lose. Okay? And we need votes. Okay, so the vote that we're going to take right now is whether or not to roll in 305 into 274, or 274 into 305, right?
And add the chief co-patrons.
Make them
Madam
chief
Chair,
co-patron.
just to clarify, because I came in late from another committee, we're saying roll in, but we're using all the language from Senator Barker's bill and listing those two as just chief co-patrons, basically of Senator Barker's bill.
Right.
So no language, none of the other stuff. It's your bill in its pure form.
Senate Joint Resolution 306 to be rolled into Senate Joint Resolution 274.
The other way around.
The other way around.
The other way around.
274 into.
With
What the motion is, this is
I'm
why,
sorry.
I'm just
You're
going to be
right.
really
I
clear about this, guys. This is why we were going to take an up or down vote on every single one, because the confusion is real. And we have different substances, and this is where the concern is with which substance are you rolling into which one?
We got it
So,
straight. We got it
Yeah.
straight, Madam Chairman. We got a motion
Okay.
on the floor.
okay. So the motion is before us on whether to roll in, and is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor of rolling them together, please vote aye.
So it was just about rolling in. It's not about reporting.
No, it's not about reporting.
It's not about reporting, it's just rolling in.
Right, I know, but that's an issue because we have.
Ayes 6, noes 8.
Okay, so they're not rolling in. We're going to take an up or down vote, and then would you be willing to be a chief co-patron then on the vehicle that's going out? It's still the same reform vehicle.
I don't understand that vote, Madam Chair, but sure, I support the concept, but I'm not sure why y'all were snubbing the work of these people.
We're not. That's really important. We're not snubbing the work of those people.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Senator
Madam
Howell.
Chairman, I move that we report Senator Barker's bill.
Second.
We've already voted to report.
No, we reconsidered the vote.
Yeah, now that bill
Second.
is back before us, so we have to now act on that bill.
That's right.
Second. Second.
Let's go, Chapman, on it.
Okay, so having brought Senator Barker's bill up before us, the proper motion is to report the bill.
I move to report
been-
Senator Barker's bill.
Second.
Second.
Right, it's been moved and properly seconded to report Senator Barker's bill. All in favor, please vote aye.
stuff.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Ayes 13, no zero, one abstention.
Okay, now the next motion is whether or not to report 274, which is still properly before us. Is there a motion?
Second.
All right, the motion's been made to PBI, properly seconded. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Okay, so now we have one vehicle. And again, I would renew my request to include as chief co-patron people who have worked. Okay. Okay, so that concludes the discussion on the constitutional amendments. Senator Dance, were you about to say something?
My things on. So we couldn't move to have 2 more chief patrons added onto the bill that's passed?
My hope is that while we voted on them individually, while there were people who had strong feelings about voting on them individually as separate vehicles so that there was an up or down vote, that if we could add them as a chief co-patron, but you're saying you can't.
Madam Chair, but.
We can't do that?
That can be done in the clerk's, on the floor before
Okay.
the final passage of the bill. It can be done before the clerk, before the final passage of the bill.
Senator
on the
Barker,
floor.
would you like to say something? Since
Yes,
you're
we-
responsible for a lot of this mess,
Yes.
would you like to say something?
Thanks for the compliment there. So, but yes, I mean, certainly there's a process for me to work with them to get them added as co-chief.
As chief co-patrons, because I think that's very important for the people who have worked really hard. And to understand that this is the first vote on a long process to get a constitutional amendment out. This is the first vote of this committee. We still have the full Senate. We still have the House, which will have a subcommittee and a full committee. So this is a long journey before we get there. And it's really important that everybody here who's worked hard on redistricting reform understand how many years we have reported out vehicles and how close we've gotten. So again, understand we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and we have many more opportunities as this moves forward. So thank you all. Yes,
Madam Chair.
Senator Edwards.
The bills are virtually identical. There's just a few changes. They are. Look at them.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Senator Reeves has to go to another committee and vote, and I'm going to let him quickly do his bill.
Madam Chair, if we could just give it a few minutes for them to clear
Yeah.
out. Madam Chair, this is Senate Joint Resolution 278, which is a constitutional amendment that would allow personal property tax exemption for motor vehicles of a 100% disabled veteran. And I do know that there is a amendment. If Meg can read the amendment. What? Yeah, we've got to do a couple of things. There's a Delegate Philicorn's carrying the same bill over in the House, and it's already gone through some of the process there, so we're trying to just liken these together. Madam Chair, this is one of the top priorities of the Joint Leadership Council of Veteran Service Organizations, and what it's designed to do is create a unified, cohesive system for personal property tax to relieve certain disabled veterans in the Commonwealth. So we talked about 100% disabled veterans on their homes. This would allow them basically one car to be eligible for that, those folks that have that designation. And I can go into the details of it, but I do have some witnesses here if we even want to hear
Okay.
from them.
We're going to be really brief because we've got a lot left to do and it's getting late. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will be super quick. Carrie Ann Alford, Director of Policy and Planning for the Virginia Department of Veteran Services. I'm actually manage the regulations for the real property tax exemption for the Commonwealth. I've been working with the Commissioners of the Revenue Association for the past 2 years, as this has been brought before the council to come up with a solution that would be the minimum loss of revenue to the localities, the easiest for them to administer while helping those veterans who are most at need. And this is the vehicle that we have come up with, and the Department of Veteran Services and Corva both support this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody anybody else? Okay. Welcome.
Madam Chair, my name is Lisa Gregory. I'm short. I am the commander for the Disabled American Veterans Department of Virginia. As I travel across the state, I see the discrepancy in some localities. So this bill would allow for veterans that live on a fixed income to have the same benefit as other veterans across the state. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Good evening, or afternoon, Madam Chair and members. I'm Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties, and we're certainly sympathetic to what the patron's trying to do. It's a very deserving group of taxpayers. It's just important to have a little bit of context. I just want to be clear that right now there's a local option to provide relief for one motor vehicle for a disabled veteran. It is not exactly the same language as what's being proposed here, but it's a local option, and some localities do take advantage of it. This would require that tax relief be provided. So, just by way of context, since the General Assembly first began considering property tax exemptions in 2009, the General Assembly has enacted 2 mandatory real property tax exemptions, one for disabled veterans, one for the surviving spouses of service members who were killed in action. And together, those 2 mandatory tax exemptions, last year the commissioners did a survey, and the combined impact of those 2 mandatory tax exemptions was approximately $50 million to localities. So we just can't support any further expansion of a mandatory tax relief. So appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Neil Minks, representing the Virginia Municipal League. The only thing I would add to Katie's statement is that the last time you did a constitutional amendment affecting real property taxes for the first responders, they're survivors, first responders who were killed in the line of duty, you did make that a local option, and we would urge you to do that same.
Okay. Is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Comment?
Madam Chair, if I
Senator
could
Reed?
just say, we're saying service disabled veteran. I'm a service disabled veteran, but I'm not 100% service disabled. We're talking about, when you're talking about 100% service disabled, which is, these aren't things they just pass out like candy. These are the folks who need it most. These are oftentimes vehicles that have been retrofitted for wheelchairs and all kinds of things. And if we're making sure that they have a home, they also have a lot of appointments at McGuire and all these other places to attend to. I don't think it's too much to ask for the Commonwealth to help these veterans get to and from by taking just one. I'm not saying 5 vehicles, just one, but it is 100% service disabled veteran. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd make the motion that we have amendments that we need to take up first before we do it. Meg?
So okay. Go ahead, Meg.
Madam Chair, we first have a substitute that's a purely technical. We just had an out-of-date provision. We amended this constitutional section at the November elections. We needed to put the correct, most current version in. And then there was some additional language that Senator Reeves wanted to add. So at the end of line 41 of the substitute, we'll add a sentence that reads, "This exemption shall be applicable on the date the motor vehicle is acquired or the effective date of this subdivision, whichever is later, but shall not be applicable for any period of time prior to the effective date."
And that's to bring it in line with Delegate Philicorn's bill that's gone through the House, so we're not having to continue to scribe. I second.
The motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the amendments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Madam Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove.
Before we take action on this, let me say, first off, I'm going to support a motion to report the bill. I'm going to support that. But at some point in time, the Commonwealth has to stop taking money out of the localities' pockets, and that's what we're doing here. I would have been much more comfortable if we had had some provision in our budget to make up that loss of revenue to our localities. It's easy for us to say, okay, let's do this. I think we need to do this, but I really think the Commonwealth, if we're passing this type of thing, should be picking up the tab for it. So I'm going to support it, but we got to stop doing this kind of thing.
Madam Chair, can I respond
Yes,
to
Senator
my
Reeves.
colleagues' comments? Just for information, there's 17,775 100% disabled veterans in Virginia, and the tendency is for those disabled veterans oftentimes to go back to their home of record, or a lot of times stay where their last duty station was, or where they have access to that health care. So in regards to my colleague's comments, in some aspects he's right. If you're down towards Norfolk Naval Station, you might have a few more 100% disabled veterans based on that population. But in the big picture of thing, 17,775 100% disabled veterans, not a big drop. But I couldn't agree with you more about that.
Okay. Senator Chafin, the motion's been made to report SJ 278, constitutional amendment. Is there a second? Motion's been seconded. All in favor of reporting, please vote aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry. I'm incapable of voting a proxy.
Ayes 13, no 0, 1 abstention.
Okay. Resolution reports. Next, we'll hear what is left right now? Okay, yeah, Senator Deeds. Okay.
You know, Senate Joint Resolution 302 says that an interstate gas company is not a public utility for the purpose of eminent domain when they come through land. You know, out where I live, aside from family, their homes, people's homes, their land, their water are the most precious things to them. And a whole lot of people out there are scared to death right now because two pipelines that aren't necessarily going to benefit any areas out in Bath or Howland or Nelson counties, they're subject to eminent domain now for a pipeline that's going to go through all sorts of property and jeopardize water rights and jeopardize their peaceable enjoyment of their property. And I just don't think it's right. And so that's what this amendment's about.
Any members of the committee have a question for Senator Deeds on what this constitutional amendment does? Anybody in the audience wish to speak to the constitutional amendment? Come on up, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm John Rust, representing Dominion. Senate Joint Resolution 302 provides that an interstate natural gas pipeline shall not be a utility service under the Constitution. In the case of interstate pipelines, construction generally requires a FERC permit, and if you have a FERC permit, you also have a federal right of eminent domain. So that this is not going to prevent the use of eminent domain in these matters. In fact, in both the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline, all of the condemnation actions have been in federal court to date. But what the utilities do rely upon is the access to the survey for pre-construction issues. And that's something that's been litigated a number of times. And if this were to go forward, it would raise serious issues about the constitutionality of that provision, which has now been up to the Supreme Court 3 times and has been upheld by the Supreme Court on 3 different occasions. So we have a great deal of concern about what this would do to unsettle an area that has been settled by the Supreme Court a number of times. You also have some question of whether or not, when you discriminate against interstate pipelines versus intrastate pipelines, whether you have created something that's run afoul of the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. Because basically you're saying interstate commerce cannot go through Virginia, but intrastate can. We think that it's likely that were this to pass, it would be preempted by the FERC jurisdiction, but it would also have the impact of denying inverse condemnation to your homeowners, your landowners. Because if we have no right to condemn in the state, they would have no right to say that there was an inverse condemnation of their property in these circumstances. We think this is going to do no good for any of us. It's going to unsettle an area of law. It's going to bring back litigation that's been going on over and over in this state. And we think it would not be something we want to put people through that pain. So we'd ask you not to pass the resolution.
Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Yeah, come forward, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Mike Carlin on behalf of TransCanada. Has about 1,100 miles of interstate pipeline in Virginia. Not currently doing any significant construction, but very concerned about the impact of this proposed constitutional amendment on the system as a whole in delivering energy. The ability to have the right of eminent domain to build an interstate pipeline to connect to an intrastate pipeline to serve our economic development goals in Virginia. So we think that could be seriously impacted, as well as the potential to have price increases due to a lack of ability to deliver. So for those reasons, we oppose. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there any member of the committee who has a question, wish to speak?
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Deeds, I can feel it coming.
I move to report. Senator Howell moves to second.
Okay. That's sort of a motion and a half of a second.
Well, I'll
Senator
second.
Spruill.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Motion made and properly seconded. Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Cosgrove has a substitute motion.
Okay, Senator Cosgrove, what's your substitute motion?
PBI.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded on a substitute motion to pass the bill by indefinitely. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Okay, the bill's passed by indefinitely. Okay, Senator Hanger, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Apologize for leaving the room quickly a while ago. Actually, I wasn't mad. I was going over, local government had called me over there for a bill that had to
I
be
know, there
voted
is
on.
no one more gentlemanly than you, Senator Hanger. We know
I don't
that.
get mad, but I do get even, so y'all watch out.
We know. Yeah.
Madam Chair, SJ 283 is something that you've seen before. Actually, I've worked on it probably for the last 18 years. We've advanced this to the House on numerous occasions. Senator Yvonne Miller at one time carried it. I've carried it before. I'm not sure who else has carried it. But in the form it's in right now, I think, and I believe the timing is right to do this. And the reason I think the timing is right to do this, what it does, it allows the General Assembly by statute to say, you know, we should take care of this rather than a situation where only the governor can do this, that we should by statute define terms for people's rights to be restored. Because as we're well aware, Governor McAuliffe, agree or disagree, he took it in his own hands to do a large-scale restoration of rights without the scrutiny that many of us would have preferred that go with that. And that's where it's at right now. The governor can do this, and we don't have authority in the Constitution to prescribe by statute how we restore these rights. And it's just a simple addition there. I can read it if you like, Madam Chair. I'm sure you all read it. However, the General Assembly may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person who has been convicted of a felony not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime for the purpose of rights restoration and who has completed service of his sentence and paid in full all restitutions, fine, costs, fees assessed against him as a result of his conviction. I know you all have acted on a couple bills, but I don't think they were of this type. That would actually, it's not an automatic restoration. It would give us the ability to put in a statute in place if so passed. We've passed it out of the Senate before, and I would hope it would be your pleasure to give me the opportunity to try to get it out of the Senate and over to the House again.
Okay, is there any?
Madam Chairman, question?
Senator Cosgrove, then Senator Deeds, and then to the supporters of the measure.
Senator Hanger, the previous occupant of the executive mansion basically restored a lot of rights.
Right.
Were all of these caveats in place for all of those restorations, all the payments of fines and costs and fees and all of that type of thing?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure whether that was totally done or not. I know in one instance where we were looking for a process for the rights to be restored where it was like in a stack of papers on a previous governor's desk that I know the fines had to be paid. and I helped the individual pay his fines. I know we had to do that. Whether or not it has all of these caveats in there, I'm not sure. But the governor can do it with, pretty much without restriction, it appears to me, by the Constitution. They had to pay the fines? We've got that. I'm not sure about that.
Madam Chair.
I believe, if I may, I believe that the governor had the option to do a blanket restoration without individually
Examining.
evaluating each individual.
The question was just
nor-
informative. I don't
Right,
know.
okay, right, I understand.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I have a question.
Senator Edwards.
Why do you put in there that not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime? I ask that question because a barrier crime has to do with you can't work in daycare centers or different places. It's a work requirement. It's a barrier to working in certain categories of business. And if by putting that in there, you're just adding something. The General Assembly can say we're not going to provide pardons, restoration of rights rather, in certain categories if they want to or not want to. But this adds another constitutional thing. If it's a barrier crime and they come and go,
Right.
it seems to me it's redundant and unnecessary. And to put it in the Constitution, the General Assembly can say, okay, if you're convicted of child abuse, you can't work in a daycare center, obviously, but that limits that you can't even restore a person's rights. And I'm suggesting we take that out on line 3024, that not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime through that end of that word on line 25, because it's unnecessary. See what I mean?
Not sure about that.
Well, in other words, the General Assembly can add and take away barrier crimes as it wishes.
Right, and I've carried legislation to redefine barrier crimes
Exactly.
before, and it's a long list.
Yeah, and it's a huge list, and it's kind of they come and go, and it's redundant to it's not unnecessary to the constitutional.
Meg, I think Meg has a comment, if you all will just.
Madam Chair,
forbear for a
after
moment.
barrier crime, we do have for the purpose of rights restoration, the idea being that the General Assembly in developing their process would designate certain crimes as barrier crimes for the purpose of rights restoration. So it wouldn't necessarily be the exact same list that we see for not being able to work in a daycare or in a school. This just gives the General Assembly the flexibility to designate these types of crimes will have this type of process, these types of crimes.
This is a placeholder, as I understand it, Meg, for the legislature to consider.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, if you put it in here, the General Assembly could not put these barrier crimes in the category of restoration of rights. It limits what the General Assembly can do if it's in this constitutional amendment.
Madam Chair, if I'm
Hanger.
understanding council correctly here, we by statutes would determine what is a barrier crime for this restoration of rights under this section. So it would still be up to us to do that. Is that correct?
Exactly. It says General Assembly may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person who has been convicted of a felony for the purpose of rights restoration. But I'm sure I don't understand not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime. I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, we got a lawyer you don't understand. Lord Jesus.
I'm not sure how else to explain it. The idea was that the General Assembly would be able, when they were developing the general law for restoration of civil rights, to designate some types of crimes as barrier crimes for the purposes of rights restoration. If you are uncomfortable with the barrier crime language, you would also need to strike for the purpose of rights restoration because that's qualifying barrier crimes.
Why don't you say who may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person who's been convicted of a felony. Those categories of crimes or something like that. I'm just having a hard time understanding the designation as a barrier crime because that's very specific.
Madam Chair,
Senator Reeves.
might I suggest the hour is late, and minds are going back and forth to the senator that if he truly feels that strong about rewording it, we could catch it as an amendment later on. I don't think the patron of the bill would be adverse to making sure we get the legal language right, but I think the intent of the bill is written pretty good, and I would move to report the bill as it is.
Let me, before we get to a motion, there are at least one or two people who wish to be heard. Carol, would you like to come forward and make a comment, please?
Madam Chair, don't forget us down here now, okay? Don't
Oh,
forget
I'm
us.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Senator Sproul, I apologize.
I go after her if you don't mind. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm so sorry, Carol. I didn't realize Senator Sproul was waiting to speak. Sorry.
Madam Chairman, Senators Carol Nagle, League of Women Voters, and we did have some concern with the language, and partly because our preference was Senator Lucas and Senator Locke's bill to broaden the not the restoration, just voting rights throughout universal. But the only thing I want to be sure here is that, and I've discussed this with Meg, that the governor's executive clemency still is retained in this bill. And that what happens, it says you may provide by general law, so the specifics later would be ironed out. So if there's, as I say, if we support the governor's executive clemency to continue.
And Senator Sproul, I'm going to go to Senator Sproul next. I am so sorry, because I forgot
That's
you
all right.
waved your hand, and then I got carried away over here when the subject of the amendment.
You were my favorite, too. You messed up.
I'm sorry. So sorry. So please, Senator Sproul.
Thank you, Madam. I don't want to support nothing that the General Assembly got to approve about the restoration rights. For over 100 years, the General Assembly of Virginia has never did anything to give people their rights back. And use that word may. I don't trust no member of the General Assembly, Democrats or Republicans. I'd rather stay in the hand of a governor for every now and then we get a governor who will have passion and do what's right. But leave it up to members of the General Assembly, no way. I don't care what you are, Democrat or Republican. I don't trust no Democrats, no Republican on giving rights to people who should have their rights restored because General Assembly of Virginia do not have passion on people who have gotten themselves in trouble. They do not believe in a second chance. I don't trust it. Amen.
Amen. I love it. I love it when you tell us how you really feel. Thank you, Senator Sproul. I regret that I didn't get to you first. I apologize. Okay. Is there any other member of the committee? Senator Eben.
Just as a point of clarification, or 2 points of clarification, when it says, it already says, may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person. It does, who has been convicted of a felony. It doesn't have to say as a barrier crime because it says may. But the other thing I wanted to point out is a barrier crime could be something like election fraud, which I wouldn't want them to have voting rights. And just finally to Senator Sproul, this adds to who can restore rights. It doesn't take away anybody's power to restore rights. I trust you even if you don't trust me.
Senator Sproul, wildly distrustful. Okay, so just to clarify, this is an expansion, we're not going the other way on restoration of rights, which is why we have reported this before, which is why you and Senator Yvonne Miller have carried this before. I just do want to clarify for purposes of the committee's understanding, this is an expansion, not a narrowing or taking away the governor's right. Okay, is there any other member of the committee who wishes to comment? Is there anybody else in the audience? I asked for people in support. Is there anybody in opposition to this constitutional amendment? Okay, so seeing none, the committee operates on a motion.
I'll renew my motion to report.
Okay, the motion's been made by Senator Reeves and properly seconded to report SJ 283. All in favor, please vote aye.
You're in good shape. I got 3 proxies.
Okay, good.
Ayes 9, noes 2.
Okay, the amendment reports. Thank you, Senator
Madam
Hanger.
Chair, appreciate your courtesy.
Yeah, go tell him that right now. Senator Hanger, the clerk has something for you. Okay, is there any other member of the committee? Senator Edwards and I have a bill. Is there anything else, Meg? All right, I'm gonna let Senator Peake go, and then Senator Edwards, you and I can go. That's mine too, yeah. Okay, Senator Peake.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 1102. I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Madam Chair, I've moved the amendment.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to adopt the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so would you like to explain the substitute?
It's a big old Christmas tree bill.
No, this is not a Christmas tree bill. And
Go ahead, Senator
I'm going
Peake.
to ask Meg to explain the nature of the substitute, if she
Okay.
knows where.
She's passed now.
Yeah. That, I got it, yeah.
Okay, Meg, would you like to
Presidential
explain
substitute.
what is the difference between the original bill and the substitute that you just distributed?
And I believe it was technical.
So the language does repeat itself in 3 different sections, so I'm just going to draw your attention to the language that's on lines 28 through 41, instead of us flipping through all the pages. So the first thing is that with the clause Romanet 3, we took out the language that said it had to have been reported prior to the previous decennial census. So now it simply just says that it had to have been reported by those localities to the United States Bureau of the Census. And then there was language added that when the localities have changed the boundary, they send that information to several entities, and the State Board of Elections is tasked with reviewing the change to determine whether there is evidence that the change was made with fraudulent intent. And if it appears after the review that there was fraudulent intent, the board shall refer the matter to the circuit court for one of the affected localities to approve or deny the change of the boundary. The rest of the bill remains the same.
Okay, Senator Peake, you want to just explain the
Purpose of
bill, the underlying bill and the
The
purpose?
underlying bill, same as that. What happened, Department of Elections, it came up this summer. They started using some GIS and more specific boundary lines. And so what happened is many people, registrars and counties were saying, somebody's been paying taxes in our county, voting in our county. The new GIS shows that they're actually on the line and their house is in another county. And this started in Fluvanna, it's in Louisa, it's in Hanover. Senator Reeves is shaking his head. I suspect many of y'all have heard this from your locality. So this bill allows it to clean that up, and there's about 1,500 citizens that it affected. If 2 or more localities agree on their boundary and properly report it, the agreed-upon boundary would take precedent over the census boundary. The census boundary is going to be done with the GIS, and so that's what's changing some of these boundaries. And this, to avoid any problems with voting, the bill includes a means for the voter to challenge any reassignments and a review by the State Board of Elections for any evidence of fraudulent intent, so you can't say, oh, I want to be in this county so I can vote in that election. Then the State Board's going to look at that. We've worked with State Board of Elections, the Virginia Association of Voter Registrars, Virginia Association of Counties, Virginia Municipal League, Thomas Jefferson Planning District, Dave glanced over there, and specifically counties of Fluvanna and Louisa, who originally brought this to our attention. We've also worked with the Department of Elections and the Assistant Secretary of the Commonwealth. So we have worked with every stakeholder that we could find on this bill to clear this up for about the 1,500 people who happen to have property on county boundary lines. And with that, I'd answer any questions, or it might be best if we have people.
Senator Reeves.
So, Senator Peake, I carried a bill that fixed a boundary line between Orange and Spotsylvania County. Same thing. The landowner had part of his farm on Spotsylvania and the other half on Orange, and then he actually had 2 houses in each place. So this would kind of designate how that was supposed to go. Is that...
Exactly. And what happened is, and somebody in Fluvanna had been paying taxes in Fluvanna their whole life, voting in Fluvanna. They came out with the new boundary line, I think with the GIS, something a little bit more accurate. They said, nope, you're actually in Louisa. You're going to have to go vote in Louisa. And they said, all my life, mate, their kids went to Fluvanna High School, all the education. So what's happened now with the accuracy of our new boundary lines, some people have been designated, their property's been designated in one county for 100 years, are being told they need to vote in another county. And so this is clearing that up and pay taxes in another county.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this bill?
I wasn't kidding.
That's refreshing.
I was not kidding when I told you all these people supported it.
Right. You want to just, yeah, unless you have something very different than he's already said. Go ahead.
Just to register our support, Madam Chair, Katie Boyle, Virginia Association of Counties. We heard a lot about this from our members over the summer. Appreciate the senator working with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Good afternoon. Sorry you had to wait so long.
Oh, good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee members. I'm Chris Watkins, the registrar in Louisa County. We refer to this as the boundary or edge cases. It affected a lot of our citizens. We were affected on every side: Hanover, Goochland, Fluvanna, Albemarle, and Orange. Over the years, the localities have kind of said, you take this one, I'll take that one. And they've kind of made these agreements. And then we have this hard and fast census tract line that put these citizens having all their life in one county, paying taxes, going to school, getting their services from one county and having to vote in another county. As you can imagine, they've been very upset about that. And so we appreciate the senator working with us. The Registrars Association supports this bill as it's in the substituted form, and we hope that you all will pass it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. David Blunt with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District. Appreciate the opportunity to have worked with the senator and the other groups that have been mentioned, and we support the bill as well.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jessica Ackerman with the Virginia Municipal League. I, too, just want to thank the senator for working with us on this bill, and we'd like to express our support.
Great. Thank you. Hey, Robin.
Madam Chair, Robin Lynn speaking as Secretary of the Goochland County Electoral Board. This will resolve a problem we have created by the census that puts close to 800 people in the wrong counties. Thank you.
Is there anybody in opposition to the bill? Okay. Committee operates.
Move the report.
Okay.
My man.
Thank you,
The
Senator
motion's been
Sproul.
made. Where's
That's right.
me?
I'm his new John Cosgrove.
That's right.
Made and properly seconded. Yeah. Uh-oh.
He's kidding.
Uh-oh. All in favor of passing Senate Bill 1102, please vote aye.
I've got two over there. If you get them. Okay. Got and Frank Ruff, and Ruff's for me too.
Okay. The bill passes unanimously.
That's 14.
Okay, we have, thank you, Senator Peake. We have 3 bills left, but 2 are identical. Well, I'm sorry, they're not identical. 2 are the same subject matter, and that's Senator Edwards' bill and my bill that deal with the agency, Department of Elections. So I think, Senator Edwards, I will let you go first and explain yours, and then I'll explain mine, and you're welcome. You're happy to do it from your seat if you wish.
We got 5 minutes left for Edwards. Please don't take 2 hours.
Yeah, we're going to fight about this one, too, and drag it out as long as we can.
As long as possible.
I'm gonna ask you.
Senate Bill 1311, you saw it last year. It got reported out of this committee last year. It creates 5 members of the Board of Commissioners, 5 commissioners of the Commissioners of Elections, appointed by the governor, all of them. 3 members of the governor's party, 2 members not of the governor's party. After initial staggering terms, each member will serve 4 years, beginning February the 1st of the year of the appointment. There's one commissioner who's one of the commissioners will be the chair, and that person will be serve his or her 4-year term as Commissioner of Elections to make sure that he or she has a 4-year term. The governor again appoints the commissioner as the chair. The governor appoints a person not of his own party as vice chair of the Board of Commissioners. And of course, the standard language, no member of the board shall, or any relative shall be seeking elective office. And the staggering terms are the first category, one member will be designated Commissioner of Elections and serve beginning January 31, until the appointments begin January 1, 2020, to go to January 31st, 2023. There are 1, 2, 3 of those, and then 3, and then the next category is January 31, 2021 and so forth. So that's basically what it was. It's the same bill we had last year that was reported out of this body. 5 members, all of whom are appointed by the governor, 3 of his own party, 2 are not of his own party. And the commissioner will be again, a full-time job. And that's about it.
Any members have a question for Senator Edwards on his bill? Okay. Senator Vogel, do you want to come up and speak on your bill, and then we can talk about the differences?
So what Senator Edwards and I did, and we were in favor of rolling them together. We didn't mind a together discussion versus up or down. But what I wanted to offer is I have a bill that is very similar. Senator Edwards and I were partners in carrying this in concept last year. We made it all the way to the end, and it did not survive conference committee. In an effort to try to avoid that happening again, I am introducing a substitute to my bill, which tailors mine much more consistently with Senator Edwards, because, again, I'm not trying to have the perfect be the enemy of the good. I would like to have a vehicle that leaves this committee. My original bill was different than his, and what I have introduced is identical to the bill that he introduced last time. It has 5 members appointed by the governor. There are 5-year terms, no more than 2 successive 5-year terms for any member. The governor designates a chair and a vice chair, and the board appoints the commissioner of the elections for a 4-year term. They are very similar. The difference is, and maybe Meg, you may want to speak to this, the difference between what I'm introducing is very closely tailored to his, and his is the governor's.
Madam Chair, let me just interrupt
Yes.
and get yours in proper order. And this is a little unique. We're going to hear 2 bills at the same time. And then if we want to do them separate, we can. But I'd like to get them both out, because if we can roll Senator Edwards into yours and it works, since it was his bill originally, then that works. But do I have a motion to accept the substitute? It's been moved and seconded to accept the substitute 1455, Senator Vogel's bill. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And I would just like to say my effort here is a compromise because, again, it is really important to me that we report a vehicle out. And I think that perhaps Senator Edwards may have more support for his vehicle. I do want to say, though, a special thank you. And much like the redistricting reform bills that we heard, there are other people who put a lot of work into this, and those were the registrars. Their association had this listed, and I think Senator Edwards knows this, as one of their highest priorities. And the bill that I had originally introduced was drawn specifically to their request. However, again, in an effort to compromise, we have this bill, which is 825. Meg, would you mind articulating what the difference is between the current Edwards bill and the former Edwards bill, which is basically what I'm introducing here?
Madam Chair, Senators, the biggest difference is that the governor will appoint the 5 members of the board, which is the case with Senator Edwards' introduced bill. But one of those members in Senator Edwards' bill is the actual commissioner of elections, whereas with Senator Vogel's substitute, those 5 members of the board, they appoint the commissioner instead. I believe their term lengths are a little different. The staggering is the same, but for Senator Vogel's substitute, they serve 5 years, and with Senator Edwards' introduced bill, they serve 4. But for the most part, other than those big pieces, are the same.
And just for purposes of explanation, the reason that I have stuck with Senator Edwards' previous bill is that I believe that while it is not what the election community necessarily was advocating for specifically, this captures the spirit of what it was that they were trying to capture, and that is an element of independence, because in order to make this an independent agency, or at least as independent as it can be, that was the distinction between whether the board was able to elect the head or the governor was. But in this case, we retain a lot of the governor's authority and power over his appointments, but in the case of who the actual head of the agency is, we let the board do that, and that's the difference in my bill. So, okay.
Do any members have questions between the 2 bills? Okay, at this point, we'll go ahead and entertain. Yeah,
Sure.
all right, who do I have first? Cosgrove, and then who's down here? Adam? Okay. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion to roll Senator Edwards' bill into Senator Vogel's 1455.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to roll Senator Edwards' bill into Senator Vogel's bill, which was originally Senator Edwards' bill last year.
It's the Edwards bill.
So that's the motion. Clerk, call the roll.
Bryce, will you vote for me?
This is to roll them in. This is to roll them in.
Okay, I got it.
Did I vote? Oh, am I good? Chase, okay.
That's 14-0.
All right. So now we're in the Vogel bill, or the Edwards.
It's the
Vogel
Edwards bill.
The Edwards Vogel
Bill.
little
Right.
I bill.
Right.
Is before us. Does anybody in the audience wish to speak to the Edward Vogel bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm not exactly sure where I'm addressing these comments because I'm not exactly sure the text now. And it's really just one word, and it's the difference between the substitute and Senator Edwards' bill. I did send some comments to Senator Edwards earlier today, but was unable to speak with him personally. It's actually on line 95 of 1311. It is the word three. And I am asking that the committee strike the word three and make it just two, as it currently is, I believe, in the substitute that Senator Vogel has offered. The issue is about the Freedom of Information Act.
Ma'am, in the substitute it is two.
It'll stay at two.
So we fixed that for you.
Woohoo! It's fixed. Thank you.
Robin, did you want to speak to it? Are you for it, against it?
Yes, sir.
Got it. I know you're for it.
I'm very much in favor of it. Speaking as the Secretary of the Goshen County Electoral Board, our association supported this bill last year very strongly. And again, we are very grateful to the two senators for coming together on this so quickly.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for the bill? Step lively, sir. Step lively. It's 5.
Walt Latham, President of the Registrars Association and Registrar in York County, sometimes it seems. We are very much in favor of this bill. We appreciate both senators working with us on this, excuse me, and we like the idea of something that would ensure some continuity to the leadership of the department, as well as a measure of independence.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the bill? I didn't think there
Mr.
was
Chairman.
anybody. Senator Cosgrove.
This is a little unusual, but I see a friend of mine out there, Mrs. Wheeler. Are you going to speak to this briefly?
Dr. Wheeler.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Cosgrove. The JLARC Commission put forth a great deal of effort at your request over the last year and presented an extremely in-depth report on the Department of Elections. They repeatedly, in their report, and I'm sure all of you have read it, many of you heard the presentation, the most striking problem they saw in the Department of Elections is that partisan politics ruled. They said that over and over and over. In a 5-member board, it's still partisan politics. You still have 3 members of the committee who can vote over the 2 members. I don't see that this solves the problem, but I understand that other people do think it will solve the problem. You will still have partisan politics, and you will not have a bipartisan electoral board to run the elections in Virginia.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Does anyone else wish to?
Senator Vogel said you didn't mind if I address that. I understand that concern, and I think it would be fantastic if when you had a body of people who could be forced to make a decision. But right now, I have people at my church who are at home because the government is shut down and they've been furloughed. And It's clear that that is not what happens in practice. And I can tell you as a registrar, one of my worries is having a body that deadlocks along party lines, along regional lines, lawyers versus non-lawyer lines, you name it, the possibilities are endless, and that will mean there's no guidance for the department and no guidance for us. I'll just be very blunt with you. I think I was on an even-numbered board when I was on my HOA, and we didn't have some of the political issues that may sometimes come up. And I think that having an odd-numbered board is more appropriate as far as leading to some resolution. You might not like the answer, but there's resolution. And I was looking in Federalist number 68. One of the reasons that Alexander Hamilton said we needed, I'm sorry, I'll keep it short. When someone brings up the Federalist Papers, you don't have
Well,
to
I
cancel
just see
dinner.
Senator Edwards starting, his wheels are turning in his head when you start talking about the Constitution.
The Federalist 68, Alexander Hamilton made a comment about the vice president. And one of the points about having a vice president who wasn't a member of the Senate is you needed a body that could reach a definite resolution. As the election people in the state, one of the reasons we need the reorganization is we need resolution, and we need something that will lead to definite resolution, or you're going to have the commissioner spinning around without any guidance or oversight because the body will be deadlocked. And I would remind you, too, that sometimes inaction is action, and that would leave us in a crippled state as far as trying to get things done. So I understand the comment. I would love to think that 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans would just see eye to eye, but repeated shutdowns in Washington have left me a little bit jaded about the likelihood of that outcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just briefly.
Senator
I appreciate
Costa.
the gentleman's comments, but anybody that served on an HOA board, I'm not sure that they should even still be standing. I mean, man.
If we approve this measure, it still has to go to finance, so will somebody want to make a motion, we can. Senator Abbott, you have a question?
One thing in the bill, and also want to respond to something that Ms. Wheeler said about having partisan politics. I think all of our local electoral boards have 3 members. Is that correct? Okay, and I think that in large measure, that they take an oath and that they usually get it right. I don't know how your colleagues are on the state board, but I don't know that everyone who takes an oath to uphold elections, or that most people have bad motives. But the other part I wanted to just bring up was the appointment power from the board requiring 4 or 5 members, 4 of the 5. It takes 4 of the 5 members, and I don't know, is there anything here that would stop a vacancy from being filled so we wouldn't end up with only 4 at a time? The governor can appoint them in the interim before they're confirmed. Is that correct?
That's right.
So does that address that? I mean, that you would, if you only had 4, they could still remove a commissioner or elect a new one if need be? I think it says you have to have 4, but there's no reason that we would have less than 4 at a time, right?
Correct. Current law, Senator Eben, and it's unchanged in the substitute, is that the vacancies will be filled for the unexpired term. So I would assume that the governor would promptly fill a vacancy. He'd have
Okay,
no reason
thank
not
you.
to. Yep.
Well, I will just say, if I may, Mr. Chair, that there are some differences of opinion about the details. But I think everybody genuinely agrees that an organizational change is warranted. And so I'm prepared to compromise and do whatever I can to get a vehicle out so that we have the opportunity to continue the debate.
Okay, so we have the bill 1445 listing Senator Vogel and Senator Edwards as chief co-patrons in the nature of a substitute, this bill, and then it has to go to finance. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, let me ask you a question.
Senator Cosgrove.
I didn't think I saw a fiscal impact statement on this.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I was about to make an observation about this. On my bill, the old bill, there was a fiscal impact. Senator Edwards did not have a fiscal impact on his bill. And now that we have stripped this back, I'm not certain that in substance it is enough like my old bill that fiscal impact would now be attached to this current vehicle. I don't know if the clerk or Meg has an observation about that, but
Senator Vogel, you're on, I think the only one on Senate Finance out of this committee right here, so you would know if your bill's got to go there. If it doesn't, you'll pull it. So
Right.
I'd be happy to have a motion that just reports the bill, and if Finance needs it, they'll pull
And
it.
we'll send it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Clerk, call the roll.
John definitely wants to support this bill.
Ayes
Thank you,
12,
Senator
no
Edwards. I have
zeros,
one
two
last bill.
abstentions.
It's super quick. It is the governor's appointments resolution that I am carrying. Thank you. Second.
Committee will bring their attention to SJR 319. You want to talk about it, or do you want to?
No, the body has had the opportunity to review those appointments. I know they were passed out to a number of folks, and I'm not aware of any issues or objections that would hold it up. And so I would ask the committee to please report the appointments resolution.
You have a motion, you have a second.
All
Second.
right, been moved and seconded to report Senate SJR 319 without objection, Senate will vote.
Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Chairman, if you can, I'm sorry. I'm going to vote no because it may be a problem. We may have to deal with it on the floor. I would like to reconsider.
I can reconsider. Haven't voted on the president's side in which. Oh, strike the board then. Strike the board. No, he wants to speak to the bill. Strike the board, Hubby. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize to the committee. I'll be brief. Senator Vogel, is there anybody taken off of this bill that we should know about? Anybody that's being replaced that we should know about?
Good question, good question.
I can tell you that I'm not aware. I don't have any personal issues with anybody on here, but I cannot speak for other people's personal opinions. But I can tell you that this was distributed about a week ago. And you should, Senator Cosgrove, have already had the opportunity to review it. I believe it was given to you.
You did, and I had just had a question.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Senator Peake.
Question for patron, Senator Vogt. Does this have anything, well, I can't remember, anyone on the electoral board as it is?
No, sir.
Okay.
This does not have, that's what your question is, Senator
Yes.
Cosgrove? I apologize. You should have, I didn't know what you
I
were
should have
getting
made
at.
it clear. My apologies.
The answer is no.
Okay.
We do have the obligation under the code for each party to send over 3 names to the governor.
Right.
We are in the process of doing that right now. That will come down later. What you're speaking to is the State Board of Elections. Those expire at the end of January, and we are working expeditiously to get that resolved, send it to the governor, and make certain that we get those in.
That being said, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion to report.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to report the bill. Hobie, call the roll, please.
That's 14, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With that, the committee rise.